Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever the heck in the world you are. It is the one and only V, the Guerrilla Economist, coming to you live on this edition of our every 4 years we do this. The election 2024 coverage is live, and we have with us the one and only Mathew Ehret. He needs no introduction. You guys know him from CanadianPatriot.org, RisingTideFoundation.net, and his plethora of mind-blowing books about where we are, where we're from, and where we're going. And that is, we're talking about the Symphony of Two Americas, Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3, Volume 4. Get it? Or be on the outside looking in and wondering what the heck is going on. We also have special guest Jason Dahl. If you're wondering where these cool documentaries that Matthew is unleashing upon the world, well, here's the man behind the scenes, the one and only Jason Dahl, the one and only Wizard of Oz, working his media magic. Also, his podcast, Super Spreaders. Go check it out. Every single commentary you could ever think of is there. And the one and only Courtney Turner is here, heavy into what's going on in politics and entertainment. A litany of a gambit of all things that are happening around the world. Check out Courtney Turner's podcast as well. And we have with us the man who needs no introduction as well, the one and only Russia Hardcore, Tim Kirby. What's up, Tim? How are you, buddy?
Good evening, friends. Pretty good, but a little bit sad because I got permabanned on YouTube, so I won't even be able to watch this video, but that's okay.
Oh, my God. Don't worry. It's being broadcast on Twitch live. We're on Twitch. We're on Rumble. You'll be able to catch it over there as well. We have my partner, Algo Cowboy, is here, my wingman from AlgoFactory.tech, joining us, giving us a little bit of the financial markets of what's going on here as the election winds up and winds down. With that being said, what's up, Cowboy? With that being said, we also have Joaquin Flores should be joining us, and Martin Seif, the legendary Martin Seif, should be joining us as well. So we'll see if those two will come up. With that being said, who wants to start? I mean, guys, this is probably the most pivotal election in American history since I'd say I can't even remember, right? Historically, I don't know whether historical president Matthew will probably comment on that. We're either going to decide today, are we going into a brighter future that is pro-human or pro-demon? That's where we're at right now. Are we going to a future where America will be a great country amongst great countries in a multipolar world order? Or are we going to go to a neocon unipolar hellhole and we all glow in the dark because some thermonuclear devices were lobbed across the sea into our backyards? What will happen? This is all on the line. Is it Venezuela 2.0? Is it 1984? Is it a brave new world? Or is it the next hope for humanity? So, who wants to start?
I just liked Venezuela 2.0. I never thought I'd hear that in my life. Now I have. I don't know. Let me just jump in and say,
Go ahead, Timmy.
8 years ago, so like into what would that be then 2016, when Trump won, there were parties in Moscow because, in fact, big parties, because everyone thought we finally have an American president who wants to have good relations with us. Well, after the genocide in the Donbass and a few years of war where the United States has a lot of troops fighting against Russia, that didn't happen. So on the one hand, we love Trump's rhetoric. We love Make America Great Again. But just to throw in a Russian perspective here, because I actually kind of need to go to sleep real quick, is people around here kind of feel really disappointed by Trump, the first presidency. They didn't get anything they want. So, Trump, even if he wants to do all these things, the question is, can he do them? I would say voting for Trump is a vote for hope, but it's not really necessarily a vote for results. Whereas vote for Harris, that's the results. That's just take a minute and right down the shitter, just straighten the drain pipe and flush. So that's kind of my view and maybe the more Russian view of things. So this time,
sure, exactly. Courtney, what do you think is happening?
Well, I definitely understand that sentiment. I've heard so many people telling me that you shouldn't vote because, they're both going to bring us to the New World Order. And I would have to disagree with that. I do think that the vote for Kamala is definitely a straight shot towards advancing the New World Order very quickly. In fact, I just recently found out, apparently September 22nd, like the Biden-Harris administration signed on to the Summit of the Future in the United States. Like they I have the article. I put it up on my Twitter feed the other day. So, they're showing that they're very much in lockstep with the UN agenda. And I understand the sentiment that, Trump is not, he cannot be the savior, even if we want him to be, but the United States wasn't structured that way anyhow. He's not supposed to be a dictator. So it is
Right.
voting for hope. It is voting for a platform. However, I do think that his previous presidency and a lot of his rhetoric, which that's what we have to go on right now, does indicate that he could be a potential disruptor to the globalist agenda, to the oligarchical structure. And some of the main things that I think indicate that are, as of 2018, I can't seem to find a more updated stat. So if any of you have it, feel free to chime in. But it was saying that the United States funded 27% of the UN. And that is a very significant number. And of course, the UN now just did their Summit of the Future back in September. And this is where they had their 3 documents that they pushed forth and they agreed upon. This was the Pact for the Future, the Global Digital Compact, as well as their Declaration for Future Generations. And some of the things in there are pretty horrifying, like their complex global shocks. And it doesn't have to be a global event, by the way, but Guterres does keep referring to things like pandemics. But he said it could be even a local trauma. And this gives them you essentially to institute global martial law. So these types of things are very concerning. So just Trump possibly defunding, and that could be done so easily. There does not have to be a moral, political kind of stance on it. Just, hey, this is kind of out of our budget. Let's not fund them. Would be a very simple thing for them to do. And there was that leaked video from Crowder where the executive at the UN said that they didn't think they could survive another Trump administration. And I think that is because the United States funds them so significantly. My friend Alex Newman was at the Summit of the Future. I was hoping to be there. I didn't get a chance to, but he interviewed a lot of the members, and all of them said they're terrified of Trump. And if we just go back and look at things like the fact that he was defunding the WHO, which is part of the UN, that is a very positive sign. I know a lot of people push back on me when I say this. They tell me, oh, but he funded Gavi. And so he really just redirected the funds. So just to clarify on that point, that was an agreement that was in place long before Trump was even in office. So while I'm not in favor of him funding Gavi, the two are actually distinct, separate things. And there's so many more examples that we could bring forth. But I think all of this just to say that for me, I would like to see a restoration around the world of national sovereignty. There is obviously this movement to create a one world governance, and that would be the dissolution of nation states. And I think the bulwark for the free will of humanity is to preserve nation states. Obviously, it's not, it's not a guarantee. Nothing is. But I think that he does indicate the potential not only for him to be a disruptor, but also some of his economic fiscal policies, I think really will help to loosen the noose around many people's necks, which allows for other people to be potential disruptors to the oligarchical structure. So I'm really hoping, now that being said, sorry, I'm being very long-winded here. I'll add one more thing. That being said, there does seem to be what I believe looks like an active measure, a real opt to convince people not to vote at all, because, after all, voting has no power. They're just going to steal it. A lot of people like to parrot Carol Quigley, who talked about how there was the CFR selects our officials and presidents rather than there being any merit to voting, and it's all an illusion. And I will just say this: abolition is what they count on. You don't watch a crime happen and say, oh, well, okay, we'll just let it happen. I have no power, right? I think just us taking action. You can't have, the United States was supposed to be, right, the famous quote, it's a republic if you can keep it. It's the great experiment of self-governance. And part of the vision of the founding fathers of the United States was to educate the body of the populace about the founding so that they would understand our history, why they structured our government the way that they did, and so that the people could be engaged and they could self-govern. But if people just opt out, even just the optics of that alone is huge. I think that the oligarch counts on abolition, apathy, the disintegration of the concept of self-governance. And that makes people much easier to control, to usurp the power. So even if they try to steal it, which I do think, looks like we've already seen a lot of evidence indicating that just the act of people taking action, flooding the polls, I think is really needed. So,
It basically really confirms the mandate to rule, because when an election has a pretty obvious result and a strong result, it really gives the person who won that push to move forward. That's something that happened with Russia, whereas now Putin in the last election absolutely crushed so much that he sort of has carte blanche to do whatever he wants. Thankfully, whatever he wants tends to line up with what the people sort of want anyways. But yeah, it's very important to have that stamp of approval.
Yeah. Jason, go ahead. You were saying something.
This comes up in my circles a lot. So I'm dealing with kind of like a battle-hardened battle horses on X is kind of my scene, getting into spaces and, grumbling about all this stuff and what are we going to do? And significant proportion of the time I hear uniparty, why bother to vote? I might as well not. What's the point? Just as Courtney was saying. And the best answer I've ever heard for that is if you believe the system is so corrupt that your vote doesn't matter at all and it's all just going to be decided by the CFR or whatever you say, then you certainly believe that they can manipulate the votes either way. So at least go vote so that they have to take an extra step to fake the vote. If you don't show up, they can just say you did. If you did vote, now they have to go find some way to erase the legal record, erase the paper, dominion it, whatever. So just go vote, vote for the clown party or whatever, but show up.
And these
so
very
it makes
same
it that
people
much harder and more expensive.
Make it a little harder for them, make them work for it. If you don't, they're just going to use your vote anyway, right? So you may as well take a stand and say, hey, no, this is what, and as you said, if you want to write in somebody else, but I just think this idea of people, and now I saw it for so many years happening in the indie space. I differentiate between the independent media and the indie, what I call indie media, which I don't think is all that independent. But I've seen it for years now in that space, but now I'm seeing it really infiltrate the churches. And that's even more concerning to me. Not that the indie space didn't have a lot of power, but I think it was kind of beta tested there. And now it's really operating through the churches. And that's very concerning because a lot of Christians are taking this stance that, God has it and it's in God's hands. And so I'm not going to vote because it's not Christian to vote. And that's, I very strongly disagree with that stance. And I think it is an op. So. Yeah.
It's like saying it's not Christian
Joaquin
to
Flores.
the speed limit.
Yeah, exactly. Joaquin Flores, he's here. The patron. What's up, buddy?
Hey, how's it going? Good to see you, Matt and Tim. How's it going, Jason? Courts, good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And I see Algo Cowboy as well. I guess we don't say who he is, but what's up, dude?
Hey, you can call me Nick. It's okay. Good to see you.
I'm glad to see him.
Joaquin, thanks for joining us. What's your take right now? What is happening? I find it hard before you guys say this, and then right after you walk, we'll go right to Matthew, and then Cowboy. Isn't it weird, guys? We are right now almost 3:30 on the East Coast of the United States, and we have yet to see. I'm checking channels and website. Where are the electoral counts? Am I missing something? I haven't seen any of it. I remember in 2016 and 2020. They're like, Trump has, this many electoral votes, and Hillary has this many, and Biden has this many, and Trump has this many. I'm not seeing anything. What's going on? But go ahead, Joaquin.
Yeah, normally we would be, I think they would be talking about returns, and there would be, they'd be talking, normally it's like what? So what time is it now again in New York?
3:30.
Yeah. 3:30. Yeah. So, and then
it's almost 3:30.
It's about noonish or whatever on the West Coast. So
we should have something.
It's probably a little early for the West Coast, but I think the East Coast, you might start seeing exit polling, right? You should be seeing exit polling talking about, maybe with 20 or 30% of people having exited voting by now, it looks, but exit polling is what it is, but normally they would report on it. So I remember, like 2000, 96, 92, there was, this is like, I know this is like one of those things that's going to end up being like a Mandela effect. Like, no, there was never any exit. What is this exit poll you speak of? Oh, that's fake news.
Yeah, what's that?
Exit poll. How do you spell that? No, it's very, very strange. Yeah, very good question. Yeah. I wish I had an answer that I couldn't be sued for, but yeah.
Exactly. Mathew Ehret.
Yeah, no,
The man.
I as a Canadian, not being really in the thick of things, I'm sort of looking at it, as is Jason in the Yukon. We're sort of trying to make sense of it and follow things from the outside a little bit. So I'm here more to learn from you guys on the ground, but I'll give my 2 cents regardless. Which is I really share a lot of the sentiments that Courtney just expressed. And Courtney's somebody who has a very similar philosophy to me, and she'll just talk to anybody as long as there's like a spark of humanity in them and they're not like overly ideologically driven. She'll talk to anybody and try to bring out the best in them. And I've seen her in action just doing this, and it works. It actually works. It's a method that Ben Franklin did. That's I would say the master key that makes impossible things happen, as far as even the American Revolution being made a possibility and actualized, had everything to do with this quality that Ben Franklin exhibited, being able to go into like viper nests and find a way to look for mentally the human spark and amplify that, put oxygen on the fire, even of people who are corrupt. Or really wayward, and get them to be useful in a oftentimes a bit of a controlled environment, but useful. So, like I myself try my best to aspire to that. And I found myself in conversations with people who are like 1 degree of separation with Bobby Kennedy, with Trump's network. And I know it's a dynamic process. It's not about Trump, right? For good or for bad, you've got a whole dynamic around the institution of the presidency per se. And we know, people who are watching this podcast know that we've all mapped out to varying degrees the evil that's taken over the Democratic Party, the evil that seeped in and influenced the Republican Party, the transhumanist death cultists that are masquerading on both sides. And we see the Pilgrim Society, the appendage of the Cecil Rhodes operation, which is deeply embedded within the Heritage Foundation, within people like Tucker Carlson. We see the connections of this stuff all over the place. So there's obviously a lot of reason. I get it why people would be cynical and a little bit black-pilled. I get it. I know it, the occult, problems of the United States and the different Freemasonic networks. I get it. And the Knights of Malta, we could talk about all that stuff. But at the same time, unlike Kamala and the thing that's dominant in an indisputed way within the Democratic machine at this point, which has fallen very far from the type of character it had under Franklin Roosevelt or John F. Kennedy or his brother Bobby Kennedy, it's a totally different beast. There's not a lot there you can, when you're looking for the humans, as in the that little spark that can receive some oxygen and act outside of some ideological control structure within the Democratic machinery. I don't see it anywhere. I just don't find it exists. Whereas within the Republican Party, it's much more heterogeneous. There are clear humans, and I believe that Trump is in touch with his humanity for all problems that one might want to list. And I see Tim there. You want to chime in? And I'm going to.
Well, to drop one comment and sort of basically agree with you, because today I gave an interview for the Russian media, and I said that, they actually asked who did the better campaign. And I would say that Trump did, because his campaign was dynamic, even things beyond his control, like being shot in the ear. He handled it very well, the screaming fight, and he did the whole stunt at McDonald's and a lot of stuff. And the Democratic campaign was terrible because they hate us.
Right.
They hate normal Americans. It's basically like having to deal with this obnoxious, horrific relative that you despise, and you have to make small talk while stuck at Thanksgiving dinner with them. That's kind of their attitude to the public. And so I just wanted to say you're absolutely right. Their connection to normal human beings is much more distant. The Republicans at least couldn't, let's just say, do a much better job of pretending to use a gun than Tim Walz.
Yeah.
Anyways, sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
Tim, sorry, but right now the FBI is warning of a bomb threat from Russia at U.S. voting sites.
Oh,
I knew it.
Yeah.
I knew it.
Wow.
Yeah, a bomb threat from Russia. Yes, the Russians, they have all those nuclear missiles. They're winning the war in Ukraine, but making one bomb, it's tough.
But I understand they have Kinjals and Iskanders, and they have Calibers and all these next generation hypersonics that are 2.5 generations ahead of anything the U.S. has. But can they make a pipe bomb?
I don't know, man.
That's the question, Tim. I don't know if they can. I don't know if they
Or
can.
you will vote Trump, or I will set bomb.
Yes,
exactly.
We don't have
even the
PVC
story
in our
here?
country. Had to buy PVC at Home Depot.
Yeah, I got folded money that says that these threats are going to occur at a swing state, important county, and then the Republicans will be kicked out from observing the count.
Oh, of course, or the toilet will malfunction and begin to backflow.
Is this the Fox News page?
Yes, the Fox News page, correct.
Is that updated? Like, don't they have any exit poll data?
No, that's the thing. Like, look at this, Joaquin. This is what's so strange. I've never seen this. Look, last updated 3:31 p.m. East Coast time. It's so strange.
That's just
current
right now.
Yeah. Why is this happening? It's so strange. I mean, right now we should have Trump has 120, Kamala has like 110, and Arizona just stopped counting at 3:00, and we'll know the results from Arizona 3 weeks from now. We should at least be there by now.
Well, did you
try? So this could be a good thing or a bad thing.
Did you try turning the election on and back off and on again?
But I can see not having elector or having any states that have finished counting. But normally, there's exit polling, and then there's after the. I'm trying to remember if they are counting the votes as they come in, like they start counting them, and then like polls are still open, right, until 7 or 8 or 9, depending on the state. But by the afternoon in New York, three or four, maybe you should start having with 10% of the votes counted, or it's like this, or with 20% of the votes counted, it's trending like this. I mean, normally, and you have something to talk about. So what's going on CNN? There's nothing trending. They're not talking about the direction at all anywhere.
If I may, I've got a bit of info here. So
this is a very strange election so far.
Yes.
Coming out of 2020, of course, but I mean, without that,
Jason, what's your information you're picking up?
Exit polls are conducted on behalf of the National Election Pool, the NEP, made up of members of major news organizations. Edison Research works in conjunction with the NEP to conduct official exit polls. They do not release results of any exit polls until 5 p.m. Eastern.
Oh, okay.
So we're like 2 hours away from exit poll data, huh?
We're close.
Interesting.
I don't know if it's always been like that.
Edison Research,
specifically about this year.
Yeah, that's weird. But Edison Research, they were also the ones responsible for spreading the exit poll data for the Venezuelan elections that put Maduro's opposition at like an 89% victory over Maduro, and the whole thing is completely tied to the CIA.
Of course they
so
were.
I'm a little troubled by the fact that they have control of the exit data anywhere, including in the USA.
The exit polls are conducted by the NED.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God! Not the NED, National Endowment for Democracy.
I'm just kidding, but
oh my God!
Surprise me.
Wouldn't surprise
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is absolutely strange. About this point, one of our listeners, Mr. Grulin, says Pennsylvania is already 100% in. Are you sure? Are you serious?
At 100% for Harris?
No, 52% Harris, 47 Donald. I'm sorry.
So,
that back up.
But it says 100%. So they've already called it?
Yeah, I guess so.
Wow.
How could it be?
Let me refresh the screen real quick. Nope, still nothing here.
Yeah.
Yeah, PA is not even counted in yet.
Isn't right,
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me in Pennsylvania, but
it's very strange.
No, wasn't it that there was like some news channel that accidentally leaked like the Pennsylvania result like a week ago or something? Remember that story? Was it Pennsylvania?
I remember that. It was a Pennsylvania. They were doing in the middle of a Formula One race or something, and then all of a sudden, they accidentally leaked. Hell yeah, I think it was. It was 52-47. Oh my God! Grulin says it's a call up already. Interesting. Well, if that's the case, I'll pull that up where it says TV leaks election results.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Okay, let's see what that graphic was.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere here.
Is it going to be like one of those Simpsons things where the Simpsons predicted everything?
Jesus, God help us all, man.
And it did.
Oh, VJ.
Yes.
Working Brother says, do a fucking episode with him, please.
Oh,
dude. Yes. I need to do an episode with him. I apologize, man. It's our scheduling has been kind of crazy, but I'll definitely do one.
Working Brother Brother's trying to say that,
but yeah,
that according to NBC, New Hampshire is already split 50-50, but I'm not sure why that would be, and it's not listed on the map on NBC. So I think it's one of those weird states where maybe their votes or delegate votes are divided. I don't know.
So Algo Cowboy has the leak there to Gateway Pundit article about the mistaken Pennsylvania leak.
That's in the private chat.
Yeah, where's that's the private chat? I'll pull it up.
It's in the private chat.
Cool. Wow. There we go. Let's see if it matches up with Rulin said.
We can put it into the public chat. Okay. Yeah. No, I can't. I'm not on YouTube.
No,
okay.
Gateway Pundit. Okay.
I got it. Present. Yes, screen. Interesting. There we go.
Yeah, in so many ways, this election is about.
Holy shit! It's the same number that Grulin talked about in the chat.
Wow.
5247. It was the TV story. Oh, okay, got it, Grulin. Got it. Thank you, man. But yeah, let's watch that number if that happens, guys.
As someone who briefly worked in local television in the United States, I can tell you that it is purely Orwellian. Like the people there are just monkeys who read like the news ticker and all that. All they do is copy it. They don't think about it. They just copy it. It is pure Orwellianism.
Yeah. I have a friend who was he does like he's a weatherman essentially, and he actually has a master's in meteorology, and he always says it was such a waste. He didn't realize he's basically an actor. They just tell him pointed things, and he doesn't need that degree at all. He doesn't have to know, but because that's what he does. He's involved in he sees the whole operation of mainstream media, and they're all just actors, just reading a teleprompter. I have no clue. The bigger story.
And I can even tell you, how do I know what was on the ticker thing? Because I have a design degree, and literally because the news ticker from AP was more of a graphic, so the designers were handling it. Like not even news people, just whatever. This looks good. Iraq war, sure, whatever.
Well,
I can tell you the markets are pretty calm. I had kind of a bearish and bullish look, like two different ideas of what could happen. But everything's holding steady, even going up today. So whatever's happening is not scaring the markets. I can tell you that.
Oh, one
if
thing
they're not scaring the market, that's a good thing.
Is the big bet in Russia is not really on who wins, but if Trump wins, will the Zelensky regime crumble within 24 hours? That's the one thing that I think people are really thinking what's going to collapse more so than say the stock market.
Well, I think they've done a lot to. Go ahead.
No, that's a very good point Tim makes. How the Zelensky regime is so much dependent on the Harris and Waltz to get in there, at least so that they can figure out a safe exit for themselves. But it's going to be, So there's this was the poly market, the betting averages, right?
Right.
So hey, I think it's if you look at. So they're saying with Nevada not even having to be decided, huh? With Polymarket. So the whole race is going to kind of it's really hard to win this if Pennsylvania goes to Harris. Something like whoever wins Pennsylvania has like a 90% chance of the whole thing. So
Jesus.
I understood that it's 33%. So if the only piece of information that you had was the information on the outcome in Pennsylvania, the winner of Pennsylvania, without any other data, is like 33% victory. So
can you
then
explain that? I don't understand how that works.
We
Like,
went
how
through
does
this.
that-
why is
Joaquin,
that? We've gone
Joaquin
through it
and I
like a
kind of
number of
chopped
times.
this up.
So yeah,
Go ahead.
well, okay. So assume that you only knew what the outcome of Pennsylvania was, right? So by that alone, you would be able to know, about who's going to be the likely winner of the whole election. You would be right 1 out of 3 times just on that alone. But in the context of the historical, like all of the election, because Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan have a history of voting together. Okay, so in the context of all the states, the winner of Pennsylvania has a 90% chance to win the whole thing. Yeah. But you can predict the winner and be 30% right with only the information of Pennsylvania, or 33%.
Ohio has also been a very strong determining state, where especially after Kennedy, for some reason, the more historical past it wasn't, but after Kennedy died, it was like, I don't know, I can't remember, but as of the 2016 election, I think Ohio was on the side of the winning president every time, at least up until that point. So
didn't that rule get broken in 2020 though, or something? I thought
maybe. I think that was the thing that broke
all
the
of these
streak.
like core states like Ohio, and despite that, Biden still came in magically.
Oh, there were a few rules broken in 2020. Yeah. There's a few rules broken. I remember watching live with my co-host Rain, and we were watching this live in 2020, and just watched a block of exactly 100,000 votes come in for Biden.
That was
1 in the morning. Absolutely wild, So I mean, we'll just watch what happens now. I just want to officially let you know that the lead story on trending on X is Russian threats for the election. Top news right now. And it's like Georgia Secretary of State says non-credible threats that briefly disrupted voting at 2 Georgia polling places originated from Russia. Yeah. Quote unquote, we identified the source. It was from Russia.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. It was a CIA VPN.
What about China and Iran? Aren't they supposed to also have their fingers in this to
well, Iran tried to assassinate Trump, Matthew. I mean, you know that?
Right.
You got the whole rest of the day to bring them in.
There was a strange bombing in Tennessee at a major telecom center.
I remember.
Yeah, and so today or yesterday there was another big attempted bombing of a telecom structure in Tennessee. So there's something about, I don't know if it's the old age.
Here we go again. Mm-hmm. No, go ahead, Joaquin. I'm agreeing with you. Like, oh my God, it's the same freaking pattern.
Yeah, so there's something, look, I know that people talk about Epsilon and different systems and ways that the NSA might just have a predetermined election, and there's different ways to take that. I joined the talk late. My daughter did something with the audio cable and I had to find it. So here I am. But I knew you guys were talking about how important it is to get out the vote no matter what. And I want to reemphasize that. So anything I say doesn't detract from that. But they need to know what people really think. I think they know what people really think without this election. Think about big data aggregators. Think about how, everyone on Facebook, everyone on Instagram, everyone on WhatsApp, all of your texts, everything you say, they know how people are voting without an election. And they know where the popular will is. And I think that Trump is more popular in 2024 than he was in 2020. And I think that the rules of COVID, whatever, can be the same as long as they're not more cheating than 2020. Then I would say Trump wins. I think they're looking at the issue as legitimacy. And what are we going to be as a country moving forward? And did they push the line too far? So it's definitely important to vote. That said, I think that there's a chance. And look, I don't have definitive evidence. I'm just, inquiring minds are open to different ideas about what credibly could be the situation. And, we learned a lot about how this election stuff works. And I think it could be very easily that they, with the threats that John Podesta made with Nicholas Bergwijn, the World Economic Forum, in 2020 with the Transition Integrity Project, the threat to stack the Supreme Court, have Puerto Rico secede, have California secede, make Puerto Rico a state, have California secede, have Cascadia, like Portland and Washington, secede, have New York possibly secede, and have Joe Biden endorse those secessions, as they were happening, and then to have a sort of a point blank ultimatum made from the military, the Joint Chiefs of Staff or whatever, to Trump to stand down or step down or evacuate the whatever. So they were going to create a constitutional crisis, a real one, a physical one, with an altercation involved, violence in the streets. And I think there was just so much terrorizing the population. And there's a certain degree of silent Stockholm syndrome, which a whole class of new males, like soy guys, have already internalized, like on this deep level. And I think they're like so terrified about reality that they don't even, the disconnect is like long occurred. So they're not even aware that they are intimidated to vote for, or to whatever, to look the other way, or to not think about it. And it's a totally scenario. It's like Stockholm syndrome, right?
Yes. Joaquin, you bring up an interesting point. There's been an advertising campaign, I don't know if you guys seen this across the United States, where they're saying, if you vote, we will know your voting record, and so will your friends, family, and neighbors. Mm-hmm. Have you guys seen that?
No.
Yeah. I'll pull up the video, but you guys keep talking.
Because you brought up beta males, so I thought you were going to mention the whole ad campaign where they get a bunch of betas to say they're man enough to vote for Kamala.
Oh yeah,
I thought that. But anyway, sorry, Joaquin.
Those actors were all like gay or something.
No, Tim, I think that one was wonderful. I know, the thing is, there's a number of ads that Democrats put out. So it turned out that a few of them had been written or directed or both by Jimmy Kimmel's guy who does his writing. And so there's a kind of a strange inherent timing or quirkiness that's the timing is comedic, but it's unintentional or something. Anyway, I thought that these are easily Trump ads. These are they're making ads for Kamala, and yet
Kamala.
I try to still get it right. I mean, because I'm from California and I remember, and there's no one way to say her name, but it just makes you wonder. There's some of the things that they have said. I mean, think about when Joe Biden put on the MAGA hat. I mean, there's just so many weird things that are strange. Remember
the Avengers
Congress meeting, live stream in the Zoom call, and they had about 12 of them in one frame, how we're doing this call. There's 12 people, and it was Black Congressional Congress, and they're we have to make America great again. And we're what? This actually tried to use the slogan. You can pull that up. You can say Black Democrats say make America great again. Maybe they were trying to deal with this hemorrhaging, this crisis that they're hemorrhaging African-American votes and urban votes, Latino votes for sure. So, yeah.
Well, what about where Bill Clinton said we needed to vet people coming across the border?
Yeah, that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's in the border areas like Texas, New Mexico. Latinos are voting for Trump. They're voting very heavily for Trump because they understand. I come from I come from a family of immigrants. We were in the United States, and in the Great Depression, there was a whole xenophobic reaction way to solve the Depression, and they had a very racist program with I think it was Union Pacific Railroad, and they paid $1 for every Mexican they threw into these cattle cars and then shipped them into the middle of Mexico. So my grandfather, who was a legal citizen, born in the United States, was caught up in this raid, and he's I'd never even been to Mexico, and then he had to go all the way back into the United States, and it was, so I'm aware of the history. This affected my family. I can see where this stuff can go. So, we have a different system now. We know who's legal. I don't think we have a culture that would support that in any way. And people are very clear that we need to close the border. And the people saying that the loudest are Hispanics. They're primarily Chicanos and Mexican Americans, take your pick, who live in the Southwest. And there's a reason for that. There's a very serious reason for that.
Yeah. This is the video that I was talking about. It was done by Paul Joseph Watson, but he highlights this weird ad campaign that went throughout the United States telling people this.
What are you going to do? Threaten Gary if he doesn't vote for Kamala. All his neighbors, friends, and family will find out and blacklist him from society. Yes, she can. Turns out, pretty much, yeah, that's what they're implying will happen. DemPac Future Forward is running this bizarre ad, menacing undecided Americans that their loved ones will be able to look up their voting record.
Election alert. Election day is on November 5th. Who you vote for is private, but if you vote, it's public information. After this election, your voter record will be updated, and your friends and family will be able to see how often you vote, whether by mail, early, or in person on November 5th. Make sure you have a plan, and do your civic duty by voting on or by November 5th.
It's just straight up creepy, and putting cheesy, uplifting music over it, if anything, just makes it worse.
Election season is here. Remember, who you vote for is secret, but whether you vote is public information. Your friends, family, and neighbors can look up your voting record. This year, whether by mail, early, or on November 5th, be sure to make a plan to vote. And after the election, your voting record will be updated based on your participation on November 5th. So vote on or by November 5th.
Vote for Kamala, otherwise you'll be ostracized by your neighbors, friends, and family. Wow, what an...
Yeah, and there's several ads that are running it. Think how intimidating that is.
Yeah, he's spot on with that. I can tell you as someone that's, done the GOTV and have to do the precincts and the, voter contact and even registration at times. I can tell you that we always, in California, we always had full access to the list as Democrats. We always had full access to the list of everyone's party identification. If they were declined to state, it said D/S. But if they were peace and freedom, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, it was there. And then what elections they had voted in. So that information they're saying is public. We've had for 20 years for sure. And they're just now making it. And it was publicly available information for the past, however, I don't know when the act was passed, but it's 30 years, let's say. But I can tell you that people just didn't go out of their way to get it because you had to go down to the county registrar's office or whatever, the city municipal. Maybe you had to put in a request for it, like planning a campaign. So basically it was prohibitive, and they pretty much just had it set up for the campaigns to have access to, even though it was public information. This app is totally inappropriate. I mean, Watson's got it right on, because this is like a threat. This is like, what does voting have to do with who can see if you voted? They don't really make that connection, but they're waiting to just know that the population of Stockholm Syndrome, new male soy boy Americans are going to understand what that means, and they're going to vote Kamala. And because your party identification is listed also.
It's not just like a form of collective responsibility, because essentially if Trump wins by 52%, that means you 100% voted for him if you voted, or some logic like that.
Right. Yeah. You're going to be on a list, like the same list that we are on, but everyone now.
Exactly. Here's the Avengers assembling to vote for Kamala, because these superpowered superheroes know that the real power is becoming a soy cuck. Here we go.
Hi, you guys. Hi, Avengers.
Hey, Scarlett.
Jumping on the call.
Whoa. I think you mean assembling. I said assembling. Don, that's pretty good. No, they thought it was funny.
Scarlett, it is our pleasure to come together and to get the vote out this election. Come on.
Yeah, how can we be of service? Well, how about we start with what our voting plans are going to be, who we're going to bring to the polls with us, that sort of thing. I think Kamala Harris needs a catchphrase.
Ooh, yes, definitely a catchphrase.
How about this? I'm just off the top of my head. I can do this all day. Shut up. I hate it. Okay. I mean, it's original, but what about something punchier like, oh, boom. You looking for this? Iron Man 2. Everybody loved it. Okay. Again, I think we're just trying to get out the vote.
Kamala forever.
That's better.
Okay. How about I'm down with democracy? It's just clean. It's simple.
Okay. I like that. It's hard to argue with that. Kamala.
Down with democracy is right. Down with democracy.
Keep it going.
This is so cringy.
No, they're going to embrace that. They're
Harris
double
down with democracy.
Oh, yeah. I'm Kamala Harris, and I say down with democracy.
I don't know if that sounds the way we want it to sound, though.
I think we just need, can we get some production, though?
Jarvis? My name's not Jarvis, but whatever.
Oh yeah, that's right. Down with democracy.
Down with democracy.
Is that what we mean, Mel? Yeah, together we're gonna tear down democracy. Will you stop playing heroic music under yourselves? I'm Kamala Harris, and I am down with democracy. Did I sound?
Dude, that was so bad. It was as bad as these celebrity endorsements where they're like reading the teleprompter failure and the Cardi B idiot reading off her phone. It was just so terrible. And yeah, it's down with democracy. Isn't Joaquin? I mean, you're an expert on this occult stuff. Is it some sort of like a double entendre where they're telling you they're down with democracy, but it's really they're trying to tear down democracy. They're trying to let us know what they really want to do.
I don't think so. I think they're literally saying they're down with democracy. I mean, the United States is not a democracy; it's a constitutional republic, and they're saying that they're with democracy. Which, if you look back at the ancient Greek roots of democracy, I mean, that's essentially saying that they're siding with the oligarchy. And that they're, all for the revolution. So
interesting angle.
Yeah, I think they mean exactly what they're saying.
Interesting angle, Courtney. That's
not
actually
good.
that's
there's like a background in this is that this was not that long ago, and one of the things that a lot of people in Hollywood and a lot of people in advertising who are typically Democrats have noticed is that there's been a lack of a campaign slogan. There's been a lack of a coherent campaign message. And so that a lot of these people that are, bright people, bright enough, they have experience with branding, advertising. They happen to be Democrats, Hollywood, no big surprise, but they're frustrated with the Kamala Harris campaign. And they're like, we need a slogan, right? And historically, those slogans came from SEIU, Service Employees International Union, whether it was Si Se Puede, which became Yes We Can, or Stronger Together, which became Hillary Clinton's. Those were SEIU organizing slogans. This time we got Nada's, zip, zilch. So they're like, wow, we are 2 weeks from the election. We don't have a slogan. Like, you know what, guys, we can win if we get the slogan now. So then you started getting this down with democracy stuff. So there was an impact just like this with the Zoom call that they had with Pete Buttigieg. And you guys can pull this up. So they're trying to also come up with a slogan, just like this last clip with the Avengers music or whatever. And they were like, Buttigieg says, I don't like Donald. And they're like, yes, I don't like Donald. That's it. Because that totally encapsulates it. We don't have to talk about who Kamala Harris is. This whole vote is about TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome. So it's like, I don't like Donald. That was it. And they were like, yes. And like, with 24 hours until the election, this could be the game changer. I'm like, guys, it takes a little more than 24 hours to viralize a slogan in a professional, 21st century advertising campaign for the president of the fucking United States. But who knows what they have planned? Who knows? They steal this election and they're going to say it was because Pete Buttigieg came up with the slogan the night before. He was like the Paul Revere or whatever and saved the day with I just don't like Donald. So this is this type of stuff. But they are in collapse. Like they are totally saying that they need. We had I forget his name right now off the top because it's very late here, but he's a well-known Democrat journalist. I can pull it up. I was talking about it earlier.
Glenn Greenwald?
Not Greenwald. It was just give me half a second. It was basically he's saying, look, we need 60% of women to vote Democrat, to vote for Kamala Harris. And we need the entire electorate to be 55% women. Okay. So those are the figures that they need to win. This was actually determined. I'm going to tell you because he's a very good pollster and journalist who's a consultant for the DNC. And he is
it's the economy stupid guy.
It could be
James Carville.
It's not Carvel. He's like Carvel, but he's more a journalist, but he does like similar like consulting like Carvel. Like he knows voting demographics and stuff like that. So I'll pull it up right now.
While you're pulling this up, I just want to throw in a little fun fact. You know that Pete Buttigieg's father was like a Marxist translator. Yeah. And he's actually the one who translated Antonio Gramsci's like works from prison.
Oh, jeez. I didn't know that.
And Paulo Freire, the Marxist teacher who's basically given us ESG and SOGI and stuff like that.
Our modern education system, right? I mean, he's kind of the downstream from Dewey, and I would argue Wilhelm Wundt, but yeah, definitely.
Totally coincidence, though. Nothing to do with Buttigieg. No.
Yeah. Right.
I'm reading here they're calling for on Bloomberg, if results start to go against Trump, he'll declare a premature win and, quote, he will almost certainly declare this a rigged election, raising the risk of violence.
Oh,
They're
God.
I
really
want to get
trying
always
into
projecting.
after Joaquin brings up his. What I'd love to ask the room is what you think will happen if Trump wins. Do you think that will America go mostly peaceful? But Joaquin's
I
trying to
think
find that. So
regardless of who wins, they desperately want civil unrest. They definitely want to try and instigate some sort of civil war. I think they want global war and civil war in the United States. That's those two are
I don't know about that, because that would be really easy to get going if they wanted. I don't think that anyone in Washington.
They want the people to respond, so that's why they try to seed things that will create dialectical tensions, and they're hoping that people will take the bait. So far it has failed. I mean, they got close to it, I think, with the BLM riots and the whole.
See, wanting to crush some sort of uprising is different than a civil war, because a civil war would be things getting completely out of control.
That's what I'm saying. They are close to it. They would like a civil war. They had that movie Civil War. They're doing all sorts of
I don't know. I don't think that that's the case, because they could have done that a long time ago. They could have done that with the last election.
Okay, so I got the thing.
You could have had your nice Emmanuel Goldstein-like figure.
You have to take the bait in order for it to happen. I'm sorry. Go on. Yeah.
No, it's really not that easy to induce a civil war. But yeah, Joaquin, what?
Yeah, it was Mark Halpern. He's an insider.
Oh, yes.
The Harris Waltz campaign, Mark Halpern. And he says the Harris campaign is looking at a defeat. And he says, look, they need the entire electorate to be fit. Think about these numbers. I'll break them down. It's impossible. They need the entire electorate to be 55% female in order to win. So just first of all, the electorate is between 50 and 51% female. It cannot be 55% female unless there is active male voter suppression, or a candidate, like if someone was voting on the Republican ticket that didn't inspire men to vote, then you can see that. Does Trump sound like that to you? Probably the opposite, right? Like,
correct.
There's so much testosterone energy coming off this guy that people are switching parties from different historically marginalized subcultures in the United States and voting now for Trump, right? So how can you get this figure? They can't get to 55% female electorate. They also need 60% of every female voter of that. So 55% female electorate. Then they need 60% of that 55% to vote for Kamala. So these are very difficult. Like,
impossible.
60% makes sense if there's like a really, really, candidate that women just love. But I think that Kamala Harris is polarizing for women. So you have women who like her because she's a woman, and then they have women who don't like her because they know the issues. And then, but you're not going to get 55% female electorate. It's just not going to happen. It's probably a 50-50 male-female turnout, right? So Halpern says you need that to win, is the thing. You see, because they need to be in the popular vote, okay? They need to get 52% of the popular vote in order to reach, by the electoral votes, how it breaks down by actual state, in order to reach 270. In other words, if they hit 270, when you look at the popular vote, they will have won 52% of the popular vote. You see what I'm saying? So they need to win. They need to get the numbers up there, and to get 52% of the popular vote, which would be the foundation for which you can have this, that correlates with 270 electoral college votes once you get into the various states and their right. So that means that they have a very tall order to fill, unless they resort to fraud. Of course they will. But these figures and these polling figures, by the way, represent taking into the historical average, treating the 2020 elections as legit. So this actually works well for Trump. What Halpern is saying is that based upon the 2020 results and the machine that we've built in this time, you follow? They need to win 52% of the popular vote, And the way to win 52% of the popular vote is to have 55% of the electorate be female, and for 60% of all women who vote for Kamala Harris. They need all those things to win.
So
tall order,
that's
or Dominion.
It's a very tall order, or they win Pennsylvania,
or that.
Well, it's whoever wins Pennsylvania is likely to win, like 90% chance.
That makes me nervous, Joaquin. That makes me very nervous.
Yeah,
it makes me
you can win without Pennsylvania,
Yinzers.
but that means you got to win Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, and Nevada, and Georgia, of course.
Yeah, Wisconsin's a toss-up. Maybe that's why there's been a lot of effort and focus on Wisconsin the last several weeks over there.
Yeah. But they're panicking because they're like, we should have had Shapiro instead of Waltz, because if you actually look at the Electoral College and where you're actually going to be safest, you've got Wisconsin you have Minnesota, right?
Oh, Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, Shapiro.
Yeah, they needed the governor of Pennsylvania, Shapiro, to be the VP pick, and that's what the people around Biden were saying. And but Obama made the decision that it was. Remember that weird clip? There was 2 clips that came out, and one was a fake, but one was real, and it was lip reading, right? It was a lip reading exercise, and you can see that Obama and Biden are talking. There was one that was a joke, and then there was one that was actual lip reading. So I don't know if the fake came out to confuse us about the real one. The fake was very funny, but there's a real one that there's lip reading, and it's the same. It's the same clip, and Obama is talking to Biden, and they're basically saying like, yeah, it doesn't look good, and we should have had Shapiro in there, and Waltz was the wrong choice, basically.
Yeah, why did they go with Waltz? Why did they go with somebody who was so obscure? He's so radical. He's unbelievable. He's a compulsive liar. He said he was there during Tiananmen Square. He said he was there during the.
Kamala Harris said that she was sleep deprived when she made the call.
No, he is white guy. He looks like Boomer, just like Biden. He fits function. It's robotic, race-based thinking.
Right. Courtney, what's your take on this whole Tim Walz and
why
discussion?
Why she picked Tim Walz?
Yeah,
I really don't know. I mean, he's a radical Marxist, and so is she. So maybe that's I have no idea why you would pick him.
It's the Davos faction of the Democratic Party, it seems like.
Pardon? Say that again.
It's like the Davos faction, the whole Marxist Great Reset ilk versus the New York crime faction of the Democratic Party, which is Clinton, Biden, Obama.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I mean that they're very overtly actually Marxist, not just So maybe they're aligned on that, but I strategically I have no idea. I'm hoping it was just a dumb move and it works in our favor because
I was thinking about the problem that they've always had whenever they organize a regime change, mass weaponization of the mob approach, whether it's utilizing ISIS or whatever cluster of useful idiots to create a fake popular movement to topple a government you don't like. The problem has always been they can't find a qualified leader from among the mob of useful idiots that they select. So part of this involves making people really stupid so that they give up their actual sovereign agency, so that they homogenize into some form of blob ideological matrix or another that's then useful as a tool. But then you can't generate the type of charismatic individual that is in any way that you can be convinced is a human, that because you're like, why are they picking such mediocre shits like Justin Trudeau or any number of these technocratic, ass suckers who just want to be invited to an upper club?
It just shows you the brain drain amongst the Western elites, man. I mean, why would anyone pick Yuval Harari as a successor?
Trudeau at least has the lineage. I mean, his family has been involved in this and has been in the elite power structure for a long time. With Walz, I mean, I don't know. That's I really have no idea why he was the pick, except that maybe it is just to pick these like really dumbed down characters, and yeah, I don't know.
And also, not only is he a white boomer, he's a Midwesterner.
Mhm.
He's one of us human vile scumbags
Right.
to trick us, the Trumpists, to vote for, because he's one of our guys. He must like cheese and football.
He gives off like a vibe of being kind of earthy. If you don't actually hear him talk or anything, you just hear like a sample of a few seconds. He seemed like a bit of an earthy, trust kind of like blue collar type of personality. Yeah. And they probably just marketed that.
A gun once.
Huh? Yeah.
He shot a gun once.
Maybe. Yeah, they say.
Barely.
But yeah, they probably just did a bunch of impact studies with liberal detached, surveyors, and they found that he just checked off enough of the little boxes, and they were like, okay, you're statistically probable. It's statistically probable that you'll attract enough people who like authenticity. But then they didn't anticipate that he'd actually start having to speak in long, more than like one paragraph at a time. They're like, oh shit, he's back.
It turned out he was lying about his dog, and his dog is not his real dog.
Yeah.
It's
dude, the guy's nuts.
Or whatever.
He's nuts.
Yeah, whatever impact studies they did were not very practical. I can tell you that.
No. I don't think he's even liked by his own like
family.
Yeah,
his own family don't like him. They're voting against him.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Do we think that they're communist, Marxist, or do we think that they're just using communism and Marxism as a wrecking ball to try to break down what we have here in this country? That's the real question.
Can you specify
they're using
who? Because I think there's both, honestly. So when you talk about people like Kamala Harris and Walz, I mean, that Kamala Harris was a trained Marxist, and I think we have lots of evidence to indicate that. So I do think actually that she's an example of somebody who really is a communist, and whether she believes it or she's just trained, groomed, to play the part, I think is kind of irrelevant. But I also think that the oligarchy uses, and they've written about this throughout history. I mean, people like Kissinger and Brzezinski talked about how they would use the ideology of communism to pit it against the fascism as if they're dialectical poles so that they could usher in the technocracy, because it's effectively, I always say that effectively these various labels, whether it be communism, capitalism, fascism, or Republican, Democrat, libertarian even, they end up becoming target audiences for marketing. That's not to dismiss the fact that they may have had some philosophical or ideological roots in the inception, but certainly at this point, more often than not, they're really just used as kind of a label, a banner, in order to target various audiences for marketing so they can clash against each other. And that's a great, breeding ground for usurpation of power. So
no, that's really, I think, pretty prescient, because I've got some friends who are on the left side, and they don't understand it when I explain how the modern left is using fascist tactics, right? They think that fascism and fascist tactics, you just got to be on the far right in order to use those. And if you use those same tactics and you're on the left, evidently they're not fascist, they're something else. Like, that's the lack of logic that I kind of see going on these days. And it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, when fascism
on the heels.
I was going to say, I mean, fascism is leftism. I mean, it is on the left side of the spectrum. The whole notion that it's somehow far right, I think, was just pure propaganda to differentiate itself. It's
not.
I like when people sit across from me. Yeah, and they say, "Oh, the Nazis were far right." Right, because National Socialist. Yeah, all right.
Socialist Workers Party, right. It's right in the name,
Right in the name, exactly.
No, I'm telling you, I'll talk to these guys. And they're listening right now. I'm probably going to get a bunch of shit for it. But I'll talk to them about this, and I just can't seem to chip through the cognitive dissonance. So I just don't have time to try anymore.
That's okay. They're terrified of their own worldview, and they want to be comfortable. They don't realize they're about to get bent over a table. And that's what they don't want to realize.
I think they want to get bent over the table. I think they like it.
That's probably what it is.
I'm curious. I know Joaquin is somebody who's actually like he studied a lot of Marx's writings and has worked with labor union organizers. Like he's been on the ground for a long time in the whole anti-imperial fight. And I don't know anybody who's read as much original source material as he is on some of this stuff. With the sensitivity to like the woke, insanity that calls itself communist, but really just is globalist entity that wants to Borgify the world. Versus like, I know that there are like people who died fighting imperialism who are also reading something different when they were reading the writings of Marx and doing different things. So what is your take on some of this as far as a more nuanced approach?
Yeah, I would piggyback on what Courtney was saying with how there's an ideological root at some level, and there's a lot of interesting stuff in there. There's a whole body, there's a lot of richness of ideas in the background of philosophical fascism, in the background of philosophical liberalism, libertarianism, conservative, as she's saying, right? And now they're kind of more just like these brands and things that can be either painted on someone or someone can embrace. For sure, what you have is in the left, a lot of big divisions, and there is a Bernie Sanders, let's say Jimmy Dore, wing of the Democrat Party. And those would probably consider themselves to be, Marxists or communists, like in terms of their own self-identity, at least socialist, right? Now, they would probably agree, more with you about the wars, about the forever wars, about the corporatocracy, about many of these things. So, I find that the use of these categories can be useful, but there's a trade-off. There's no solution. They can also be very divisive, and they can kind of get us away from actually what's going on, and it can make us blind to understanding who could be our allies in this fight, because we have to go beyond left and right and beyond these categories. We have to build a historic bloc. We have to build something that's never been built before, which is going to take people that might see themselves as nationalists, as conservatives, as communists, whatever. And it's like, if we can just focus in on what are the fundamental problems in this society and agree on those, right? So Matt, in answer to your question, yeah, there's been big changes in the left. And yeah, I can tell you, like, the Soviet Union was not pursuing the LGBTQ phenomenon. They were not, right? So there's something about Western Marxism that happens with structuralism, post-structuralism, and critical theory that is very unique. It's very Trotskyist influenced, and it's very different from Eastern Marxism, which is in many ways a different phenomenon. So when you look at, Kamala Harris, and to whatever extent we're looking at Marxism, and that is that she cannot offend the Marxists. She can, like the ones that would identify that way. She does need to court their vote. Like if they don't get enough socialists voting Democrat, which is why you always see Jimmy Dore vacillating. He can never quite pull that trigger. Maybe he has now, right? But it's a kind of this fishing, this troll thing. Like we're going to break with the Democrats because they're becoming too imperialistic or too whatever. So, but I would say, yeah, Matt, it's these labels can frustrate us and get in the way. But you think about, and like you're saying, in a lot of people that were fighting against the cabal in Central America, in Sub-Saharan Africa, in South Asia, Southeast Asia, be it Vietnam or the Koreans, very proudly and very, very sanely, they were communists. That's a different phenomenon than what you have with, the gender, historical revisionism. What's going on now is like cultural wars, which is based in this. It's not what Gramsci prescribed, but Gramsci developed a technology that was derivative of the philosophy of a proto-fascist, quasi-Marxist, proto-fascist philosopher named Georges Sorel. And Sorel's ideas really are what about hegemony is really what influences Gramsci. Gramsci makes it like acceptable for Marxists to talk about these actually more proto-fascist ideas, and that's really what the critical theory school and structuralism and post-structuralism in France were really focused on. For them, it was like, here they were at these universities, and the ruling class is like, we want to invest in, making the craziest hybrid of the most potent ideologies that we can weaponize in service of the ruling class. So whereas, the fascists might focus on the nation, and whereas the communists might focus on the workers, This is like a new plane where we're atomized as individuals, where we're like these marketing subjects, as Courtney was saying, and that we become like these targets that can be compartmentalized, atomized, and weaponized against each other. So it's not about overthrowing the ruling class, right? It's the ruling class using the science that could be used to overthrow them in certain contexts for sure, but they're using the science to divide the people. So I see a lot of Marxism or Marxian analysis can be useful tools. It's like a gun. The gun, Marxism doesn't kill people, people kill people, right? And I would say that anyone can use this and understand this. Like when we understand how Trump has been so successful in wooing organized labor and building strong ties with the working class, you have to have a class analysis. You have to know, and the class analysis is something which Marxian tools analytically allow us to see pretty clearly. But, the thing is that you get young people, you get a lot of people that are easy to indoctrinate, and they can be told that this is what it is. And every generation can be told this is what it is. And it's like that P.T. Barnum bit, like there's a sucker born every minute. You just have to be walking along at the right time. And I would say that there's a lot of university students that are being indoctrinated. And it's very strange because they're being shown, historical aspects of communist insurgencies or revolutions. And they're saying we're like them. But if you talk to those communist insurgencies, you'd be like, we're not like homosexual, trans, whatever furries. Like this is a new, you know what I mean? So I'm sort of like, look, the 20th century, there's so much to gain from. In the 20th century, we weren't throwing around the labels of the 19th century. We weren't calling people, oh, you Bonapartist, oh, you whatever, right? Like the 20th century, interestingly, they used the labels of the 20th century. So we're in the freaking 21st century now. We're dealing with technocracy. We're dealing with whatever's going on now. I think we need a new dictionary that won't alienate radicals, by the way, anywhere, that definitely have their heart in the right place and can see there's something very wrong with our banking system, with our corporate system, with our financial system, with our employment crisis, inflation, wars, etc. So I'm looking at, we're in the 21st fucking century. And I would just say that we need a new dictionary, but I know what people mean when they say it. It doesn't bother me at all.
One thing, let me jump in, is Russia provides a little bit of a counterpoint there, because in the 1920s, like during sort of the remaining years of Lenin and the early years after his death, there were actually a lot of, let's just say, parades that involved, like, people would say something like down with the equivalent of down with decency, and there were nudists and trannies and other freaks who were part of sort of the revolutionary movement, but Stalin crushed all that. So to an extent, that freakishness that we see connected with communism today, it kind of was tried in the 1920s, but it would probably be considered too early by others, or it's just something that didn't work for Russian culture, or Stalin himself got rid of it. So I slightly I see what you're saying, but like in Russia, they tried all that and failed.
Well, this is like, Tim. So you had in Soviet Russia in the early years, right? You had a big influence of the German Rosa Luxemburg, who was definitely like in the free love movement and stuff like that. But when you get into the Soviet, like Lunacharsky was head of the Academy of Sciences and of Culture and Arts, and Lunacharsky did, like you said, like allow some of these things at first in the avant-garde period, and like in the years after the Civil War, like 1920, 2022, whatever. But as soon as they got the new economic policy going in 1921, and they said, we're going to bring back markets, we're going to bring back private property. When Lenin said, we're going to have a competitive market system, it's going to be called state monopoly capitalism. So no, we're not ready for socialism at all. And they also got rid of all that stuff, like you said, and moreover with Stalin as well. So yeah, but it's more clear to explain to people that Rosa Luxemburg and early Lunacharsky and connection was adopted in the West. It was abandoned, like you say so correctly, and left behind immediately by the Soviets, like in the first 4 or 5 years. But those were the things, like when they were criticizing Stalinism, they were saying, it's because he's anti-Semitic, homophobic, blah, blah, blah. You see? Yeah. So the Western Marxist critique of Stalinism and communism is that it was right-wing, not that it was too left-wing. So there's so many things that, like I said, our dictionary is effed up, you know, and we got to blow it up. We're in the 21st century, man. Let's talk.
Well, yeah, and as soon as Stalin said, "Well, you know, we're just going to do socialism in one country," that's when they lost all the Western communists. But anyways, guys, I got to go. It is very late here, and I have to wake up in the morning. So thanks for having me on the program. I wish you the best, and I hope we all wake up tomorrow. All right.
Have a good one, Tim. Thank you. Have a great night.
Great meeting you. I want everyone to know that I'm 55 days streak on Duolingo learning Russian, just in case.
Just in case. Just in case. Guys, I got something funny here to show you guys. Let me just bring this.
So, quick note as you're bringing that up, if those kind of what Tim referred to as freaks were kind of chucked under the garbage heap in communist Russia, I'd say let that be a lesson to all the people who are kind of on the fringes right now. If your side wins, you might be the ones that end up in the gulag.
And they never think that. They always think they have a seat at the table. That's the problem.
They're going to have a seat, but it's not going to be the one they want.
No. So, guys, I don't know if you guys saw this or not. This was leaked a couple of days ago. This was a leaked MSN mock-up footage of election night. It was reported to use the Harris internal polling. It shows Trump leading in Pennsylvania by a small margin, winning in Michigan, winning in North Carolina, winning in Georgia, and in Arizona by strong margins. It shows Harris leading in Virginia by an unexpected tight margin. And it shows Republicans leading in the Senate race 49-44 with 7 uncalled. It also shows Trump winning in Michigan and Wisconsin both. The footage is from last week. It looks like internal polling isn't looking great for Kamala. I wonder why the MSM is hiding the truth. I'll play it real quick.
Is this a theory or is this a legit thing?
No, it's a satire.
No.
Community note.
This one, it has a community note. Yeah, this was supposed to be leaked footage, like a rehearsal. Right. This is a network test run of the equipment. It does not use Harris campaign internal polling data. Well, that's the community note says. But it gives us a sentiment of what the networks are thinking, of what the bigwigs are thinking, right? So let's just take a look at this.
Michigan, right here, this is really big for Donald Trump. Saginaw, Michigan. It's an area that, you know, we have a very easy comparison back in 2020.
Apologize for the audio. It sucks. It's as loud as it goes on this one. It's somebody's recording this off of a camera or a computer screen internally at MSNBC.
I like the new news host.
Yeah.
It's a really good sign for him. And, you know,
yeah, you can see he's practicing because he's wearing like just a regular shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do these. That is true, but that's very specific. You know, what I understood about when they do these is not that it's a test. You can see that this is a test there, but it's that they might pre-create footage and then based on what happens and but this is very specific numbers, so could be just a test, but
yeah.
A couple of ways to get there.
And it's digital. They could save this and play back whatever they want, to say anything they want, to start a narrative, which is, what 2020 totally felt like to me. It felt like they were building a narrative instead of recording.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly correct. They could be building a narrative here. They're probably. I mean, look, this being leaked, and then the fact they're not releasing any of the exit polls, right? Like, this is crazy, guys. I'm just going to update right now. 429 on the East Coast, almost 430. Nothing. I've never seen this. I'm 45 years old. I've never seen this.
I'm feeling like we're in a magic show right now. Like the illusionists are at play, and it's creepy.
It's weird, man. It's weird.
I mean,
can I pose a question to the room?
In
what do you
half
think
an
will
hour,
happen
they
if
should
Trump
start
wins?
publishing exit poll results right?
Say again, Joaquin?
Within half an hour, they should begin with, by what they're saying this year, they should be putting the exit poll results within half an hour.
We should have gone, because of all the early voting that was done on both sides, because everybody's scared of the other side cheating, right? We should have had exit polling by 9:30 a.m. 9:30, 10 a.m., 11. Here we are at 4:30 on the eastern seaboard of the United States. We have nothing, zero, nothing. It's very strange. I've never seen this, especially in this high-speed data world we live in. Where's the data? This is odd. This is an anomaly. Are they Is Kamala polling that bad? They don't want to let that out. That's the only reason why they're not saying this. Because if it was a tight race, we'd have exit polls.
And we're getting warnings from governors about how long it's going to take to count this time. That we're saying Thursday or Friday now, getting everybody ready for the inevitable recounts. They're going to come through. It's going to be fun watching the Democrats demanding recounts and saying that the vote was rigged and all this stuff when they've been pushing to make that illegal for 4 years now.
But they're allowed to be schizophrenic. They're allowed to be bipolar. They're allowed to have no memory, right?
Yes.
This is wild, guys. I really think,
man, it's what about how I feel. It's how I identify, and I identify as having my vote stolen,
Yeah. I think Kamala's exit polling is in the shitter really bad. Because if this was tight, we'd have some numbers. We'd have some potential. They'll show the percentages. They'll actually show New York, 80%, 60% remaining. We remember those things, guys. You'd see it like on a state by state level. 80% of the vote has been counted, 20% left, 10% counted, 90% left. We'd see that, and we'd see the exit polling. If this was a tight race, this is data that should be very prevalent and accessible. But here we are at 4:31 p.m. on the Eastern Seaboard, and we have nothing across the board anywhere. And I've checked Fox, I've checked CNN, I've checked MSLSD, CNBS, you name it.
It'd be interesting to go back to 2020 and see when they started reporting exit polls and stuff. Those
I remember waking up at in the morning at 9 o'clock, and all the stuff started tickling by 10 o'clock, and then by 3 p.m. Arizona stopped counting with only 40% of the votes in. Do you guys remember that? At 3 p.m. And we knew how much were the votes in, right? How much were the votes were in, and we knew by state and by county, but now nothing. Nobody's counting any votes in. Nobody's counting the percentages. There's no exit polling. This is the most in the dark election I've ever seen in my life. This is weird, guys.
It is so weird. Wow.
Well, I think it's clear that it's supposed to be, Reagan Carter. I mean, this is supposed to be a blowout for Trump. When you look at any kind of, honest person by person polls and the betting and the calls and stuff like that, this should be an absolute blowout for him. But they're manufacturing this incredibly tight 50-50 race, so they got a hell of a narrative to hold on to here. And then, I mean, I don't know. I'm almost more scared about Trump winning because I'm worried about what's going to happen after that. What do you guys think they're going to do if Trump is in there with Robert Kennedy in health, and who knows what Vivek and all these incredible people around him that are highly dangerous?
Ron Paul.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, all these people that are going to go to work for him, and this time he's not going to have John Bolton around.
Yeah,
he's going to be a real threat. What do you think they're going to have to pull something? World War III, insurrection. What do you think?
I think they're going to try to decertify the vote or do some sort of shenanigans along those lines.
Right.
That's what I'm thinking. What about you guys?
Joaquin had made the point. Oh yeah, sorry, Corey. I'll just say quickly. Joaquin made the point that they tabletop the breakaway exercise with John Podesta and what's his face, governor of
Nicholas Bergwijn, and
yeah, back in 2020 regarding the possibility of a Trump victory, and that scenario involved California going rogue with Cascadia and a few other blue states going rogue together, and so they gamed that out. So that's probably one factor. I don't know, Courtney, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one factor. I do think I know I had mentioned it earlier, and it wasn't people didn't seem to agree, but I do think if they're going to try and trigger some sort of unrest, I think that's what they want. So if there's, whether it's decertifying it to try and get the right to react, so they can create some sort of a lead for even if it doesn't turn into an official civil war. But I do think that's what they want. They want some sort of balkanization because it makes it much easier for them to control if people are divided. So
In
I think
2016, you saw the emotional reaction. When you got all the memes of the girls screaming in the streets and stuff like that. That's now going to be Molotov cocktails.
So I
that's my
really
thought.
encourage people not to take that bait, because I think that's really what they want. When you talk about the emotional reaction, it's really funny. Not like haha funny, but I do aerial, and the night of the election, once Trump won, I went to an aerial class, and my instructor basically held a seance because they
Oh my
were
God.
all crying. They
Oh
were
my God.
devastated that Hillary lost, and it
Jesus.
really was like a seance. And I interjected. I was the only one who, wasn't hysterically crying because Hillary lost. And I said, I think it's very unprofessional to assume that everybody who is paid to come into this class agrees with your political stance. And if nothing else, this is poor business. And maybe you want to reconsider and have your seance another time. She was just stunned. Totally.
If you had a dime
stunned.
for every time you've had to say you're the only one out there, I'm sure you'd be a rich woman. Even for me, I'm in like indie filmmaking and stuff like that, and so many times on set, I just have to stop crew members from just blasting out about what a fascist Trump is and all this stuff with 40, 50 people on set. Like, what gives you the right? They're just so used to having the airwaves that they just don't even consider this kind of stuff. And
they don't consider that somebody might not agree with them. So I would say I do think that they're going to do whatever they're going to try and get a reaction. So I would encourage people not to take the bait on that. But yeah, I think that they have a long period of time before Trump takes office if he wins, right? So between now and January, I think we could see a lot of shenanigans and a lot of attempts to get reactions from people. And I think we could also see potentially another assassination attempt. There is also another scenario that I could see is where they do let Trump get in, and they even wait till January, he gets in, and then they do an assassination attempt trying to get there. Because I kind of see JD Vance as a bit of a puppet for them. And I could really see them saying, okay, yeah, we're going to let Trump get in so that we can get our tool. Literally, their pawn, their puppet. And
he's like Bush for Reagan.
Pardon? Yeah, exactly.
Because
Right.
Vance is connected pretty deeply to I
Peter
think it's
Thiel.
Palantir.
Peter Thiel, Palantir, also the whole integralist movement as well. So he's got his hand in the pocket of a lot of the right-hand path of the left. And I think he's a great vehicle for them, unfortunately. So I can definitely see a scenario where they're wargaming that. And when you bring up Reagan, I actually see a lot of similarities with Reagan. So, a lot of people will say, oh, Trump is just going to advance the New World Order and he's no better. I don't agree with that. I think that anybody in that position, you have to expect that there's some compromises they're going to make. I think it would be really naive and foolish for us to think, he's just completely a free agent. He can do whatever he wants, even if he had the best of intentions, even in an ideal scenario. That just doesn't seem all that realistic. Certainly anybody who knows what it takes to run a business, even a very small micro business, they have to make compromises, right? The CEO doesn't just get to do whatever he wants. And if you think of the corporation of the United States, which I think we can make a strong case that it is, that's a pretty big company to run. And there are a lot of deals that are going to be made. And there are concessions that are going to be made. So I just, we can just put that right out front. I think it's just naive to think that he has complete free reign. However, that being said, I do see the similarities with Reagan. I think Reagan did have some really good intentions. I unfortunately think that he advanced a lot of the agenda of the New World Order. I think there was some major infiltration. Certainly once they attempted to assassinate him, I think he kowtowed quite a bit, understandably so. But there was major, I would argue, from lots of infiltration and subversion. But, there was a lot of Fabian infiltration in the Reagan administration. And I don't think that's something people are too familiar with. I don't think it's something people really think about. And especially a lot of people on the quote unquote, again, the label of the political right, they tend to have kind of this idealization of Reagan, this kind of infatuation with Reagan as having been, this iconic kind of savior for America, when in reality, he did advance a lot of their agenda. However, he also gave us a great economy, and there's something to be said for that. I mean, the Carter years were brutal. I wasn't around for them, but my parents were, and they talk about waiting on gas lines, and it was really just like being strangled. And here's the thing: desperate people are focused on survival, and they do desperate things. So when you loosen that noose around their neck, it allows for the ingenuity and the creativity and the productivity of human beings that you don't have in desperate times. So, again, to go back to my stance in the beginning, when I say that it's not just Trump being a disruptor, it's to allow for the potential for there to be disruptive agents in the United States and potentially, around the world too. I think there's a reason why there are people in other countries are so focused on our election. And I remember being kind of baffled by that in 2020 when I was pretty much in the dark and, really very much, if I could even say it like I think normie would be a euphemism, I was really kind of very asleep. But the one thing when I started to get engaged and get involved, the thing that I was really taken aback by was how many people from around the world kept reaching out to me, talking about how they were very concerned with the election and how invested they were in Trump winning. And, I found that really strange as somebody who had been kind of Amerocentric and I didn't really focus on other countries' elections. Why do you care about our election? But I think it's because of course it does have an impact, and I think that there's also this notion of, because of our founding documents and how I find them to be very unique, particularly the Declaration of Independence, which I think sets the tone for for the structure of the United States government. There really are no other codifying documents that stipulate that we are endowed with free will from our Creator and the right to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that concept is very, very unique. And I think that I use the analogy of kind of like the beekeeper. It is that sets the tone for being the preservation of free will. And I do think that when people say it's a very pivotal election, it's not because I think Trump is a messiah or savior, or that he's not going to do anything that might advance the global agenda, because unfortunately I think that that's just really naive to think that would even be possible. But I do think that he will potentially disrupt some things, and I think he will potentially at least slow down and derail some of those plans. So
yeah,
I think you
sorry, what was that? One of the key things that most people don't realize that Trump did was get us out of the Paris Climate Accords, and why that's integral is simply this: when you want to do the whole ESG, environmental social governance, right? If you want to do that, and you want to do the social credit scores, and you want to do carbon credits and all that other stuff, the Paris Climate Accords was the underpinning structure for all of that to happen. Him removing us from the Paris Climate Accords, from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and then the other trade deal that was going on as well, which I can't escapes my mind currently, but those were the three unpardonable sins that he's done to globalists, and that's when the machine went completely full tilt and spent $2.5 billion, $3 billion almost, to get rid of this guy. And that was on the first time around. And then they never stopped spending money to make sure that he doesn't run. I mean, it's plain as day for anybody to see this who takes the time to study this. This man is a threat. And he's the most, what's the word I'm looking for? The most investigated individual in Washington, D.C. And one of the things I do know about D.C. is that nobody escapes out of there scot-free. If they're trying to come after you, they will invent something. They will find something that sticks. And so far, he's been the Teflon Don. And here we are, November the 5th, 2024, election of a lifetime. And it could very well be that we're witnessing maybe a major upset to the globalists because they know this is their last-ditch plan. This is their last-ditch effort. They fail here, the Rubicon is getting crossed, guys. That's the way I'm seeing it here.
Yeah, well, to tag along with that, I mean, I follow the UN pretty closely. And one of the reasons they did their Summit of the Future, where they talk about how it's going to be the UN 2.0. So essentially, it's to strengthen the UN Charter, to give them more control, more power, and get closer to their, of course, 17 Sustainable Development Goals, but also to their visions for global governance. And that one of the things they keep saying is that they're really behind schedule on Agenda 2030. And they bring up the Paris Climate Accords all the time. They keep saying that, that it was so integral, so instrumental for them achieving the Agenda 2030. And the fact that, of course, Biden did bring us back in, but the fact that Trump pulled us out, they say was a real thorn in their side.
Exactly. Matthew, Joaquin. Good.
Yeah. I got a little side conspiracy hustle that I always kind of run through as well, that, the Trump might have all the intentions and some ability to disrupt things, but it might be just as beneficial that he gets in for the globalist cabal that we speak of, because they can just amp everything up. 4 years of 2016 of radicalizing the press further, radicalizing the populace. Perhaps, they're good betters and they have calls and on both sides. There's smart people playing here. And so, if Trump gets in, it's not necessarily the end of the world for them.
No, that was why I brought up Reagan. I think that they very much utilized Reagan very similarly.
Right.
So I do see a lot of parallels there. And I think that Trump has a track record of allowing some not so great people to surround him and influence him. And certainly, for there to be infiltration and subversion. So I don't disagree with that. I just still think ultimately it's the better option. Ultimately, we'll still have a lot more potential and more hope. So
CJ has just joined us. El Cuco.
What's
it has
up?
been too long.
What's ladies and gents? How's everyone doing?
Good, buddy. What's your synopsis, man? Lots of things flying. Steve, don't you think it's strange we have no exit polling, no
Bro,
percentages
that's the only reason
of?
I'm here. That's the only reason I'm here. To listen to you guys chatting, so I can gain all the information.
Yeah, go ahead, man. What's your take? Well, how you feeling about this whole nonsense?
Well, I think, it's very interesting, no doubt. I think when you look at this election cycle, you can frame it in a lot of different perspectives, right? Domestic policy, foreign policy, what's going to yield the results that's going to get America rehabilitated and get us back on stage to be more of a global player, joining instead of a lot of the foreign interventions that have we've been in the last couple of decades. My thoughts are, and my concern is that, and a lot of commentators aren't even discussing this, and I think it's a very important topic, is that Trump can only serve one term. So I'm already looking past the next 4 years, because I think unless there's a House and a Senate majority, I think Trump, if he wins, he enters as a lame duck president. I don't know how much he's going to be able to get accomplished without executive orders. And I think what's happening here, so I'm starting to think 4 years out, okay, if J.D. Vance is going to be the nominee in 4 years, are they gearing this up for a Bobby Kennedy VP or Trump Jr. as VP? And even people like Lori Flynn from Blackwater or BlackRock has even admitted, saying that, this election cycle, we win either way. It really doesn't matter. Both Kamala and Trump are good for Wall Street. And that's quoted. So I think that domestic policy, absolutely, you can look at the differences. Internationally, I think Trump could definitely bring some good in terms of Ukraine. My fear is that he would leverage an attempt to separate Russia and China with his relationship, which we know is not going to happen. It's like that foundation, that relationship is solid as a rock, and he's not going to be able to disrupt that. My biggest fear is what kind of green light does he give to the Zionists in Israel? And everyone keeps talking about the fear of World War 3 and what's going to happen, does that embolden Netanyahu with Trump victory to do what he wants in the Middle East? So those are my concerns as far as how this plays out. But then also, I just cannot forget that the differences between the policies and how it's being handled in regards to this current administration, that we're definitely not going in the right direction. I'm hoping that the people that are supporting Trump hold him accountable this time instead of what happened the last time, because the last time Trump was elected, everyone excused everything he did. Everyone wanted to have an excuse for everything. He bombed Syria. Well, he bombed a rural area of Syria that really didn't matter. He assassinated an Iranian general. Well, that's because the deep state did that and he didn't know about it. He stayed in Syria to confiscate the oil. I mean, there's numerous things that people wanted to excuse time and time again. And already there's some signs of concerns. Pompeo was in, what state was he in? He was in Pennsylvania, and Trump introduced him kind of like he did Hillary. Did Hillary whenever he was saying lock her up and everything, and then he introduced her as the queen and Bill Clinton at the whatever dinner it was with the media. He said, "Hey, let's stand up and let's give her a round of applause." So again, I can't remember. I was listening to one podcast, and I think they said it best is that.
Hey, Siege, hold on one sec.
Okay,
hold on one sec. Matthew, I know you got to jump, so you go ahead and you want to say what you got to say real quick. Then we'll come back to Siege.
Oh, I don't want to cut off Siege, but well, okay. I do have to jump soon. It's true at 2:00, but well, Siege, do you want to finish your thought? I don't want to. I feel like
no. I'm just going to land it. I'll land it here and just saying that I think American politics, and I can't remember who stated this. American politics is the comedy division of the globalists, of the oligarchs. It's the comedy division, and that's how they operate it.
Yeah.
I think overall, before I leave, my 2 cents looking at this is similar to what's been said. I mean, I do think that if you want to know what they want with the big they, capital T, one of the scenarios that they do really want ultimately, whether it's going to be in the very short term or whether they're gaming it out a little bit longer, I don't know, is what they put out in A24 films, especially in the Civil War movie. So I do agree with you that that's a desire. It's a statement of intention. Obviously, it's wrapped in a little bit of fiction. However, I don't think Texas and California would ever actually ally together for a common cause. But that being said, it is part of the Phoenix moment that they do want to bring about as far as this Rosicrucian alchemical, burn it all down culmination of destruction and sort of have an emergence of a new order, a new age of Horus out of the fires and ashes that some of them have fetishized about. And they tried to get that in the 19th century. That was, if you look at a lot of the players behind the scenes in the years leading up to the Civil War, it involved very much that Masonic occult operation on the abolitionist side with the northern jurisdiction of the Scottish Rite operating on the one hand, pushing people like John Brown and others to go off and do a little terrorist thing to amplify on Harper's Ferry. That was being coordinated by Caleb Cushing, by the worst elements of the Grand United Grand Lodge of England. That's sort of the master lodge of the Scottish Rite that was pushing to amplify the discord, while at the same time the Albert Pike faction of the Scottish Rite Southern branch was working with the Knights of Malta to create things like the Knights of the Golden Circle, to have this whole expansionist slave empire with Cuba as its center. And out of this is where things like, Sullivan and Cromwell came out of, United Fruit, all this shit. But that was tied directly to what became later on Opus Dei in the 20th century. But earlier on, it was still the Knights of Malta operation, very much embedded with a lot of these theosophically oriented, Rights of Memphis, Mizraim crap that Garibaldi was creating as his, the early color revolutionary for Giuseppe Mazzini. That was the whole unification of the Memphis and the Rights of Memphis and Mizraim. That was done in 1880 by Garibaldi, right? That Albert Pike's second in command, John Yarker, goes on to lead that thing when he's not initiating. Theodore Royce as well, and co-creating things like what become the New Templars. You know, he's working with a lot of the esoteric branch of the Theosophists that we've spoken a lot about. So there's a lot of this like overlap of right-hand, left-hand path of occultism that ultimately they're all doing the same thing. Luckily, back in the 19th century, you had much more high caliber thinkers and strategists around Abraham Lincoln who were able to like not fall into that controlled opposition path that was set up for everybody to blow up together. And they were able to like create an alternative outside of the controlled game. So it bought us some time. It created a lot of potential, but you know, we've wasted a lot of time too over the last 150, 60 years since then. And now we're sort of like falling into a bit of a repeat. And I look at the Knights of Malta everywhere, managing the right. A lot of them are overlapping with certain elements from the Thurn and Taxis family. You know, a lot of these old families that were very high up in the Habsburg Empire are still at play. The Habsburg himself was the head of a major think tank that, you know, became the Dignitas Humanae Institute, which still has Steve Bannon as its front man out of this old monastery at Trieste, right? That's integrated with other, you know, Crowleyite operations from the Asian Scientology branch, and you know, Hubbard. And you look at the Scientologist operation, which is, again, in my mind, I now see Scientology as an initiatory process of fulfilling black magic and Satanism. I mean, Hubbard saw himself as the disciple and descendant of Aleister Crowley from the OTO Lodge. So it's just a loose variation of the OTO. And I think like operating Thetan is just another way of saying, you know, Ordo Templi is a bit of an inside joke. But so they created this whole like Asian version of the whole thing with like, you know, demonic forces from other dimensions, a la Theosophy, that are like composing up all of our emotions in some weird Manichaean dualistic universe that we have to heal ourselves from. And a lot of it is very much enmeshed with what's been contaminating the right. Again, Knights of Malta, I look at people like Peter Thiel, who's a member of the Knights of Malta, who's also on the Bilderberger steering committee. That gives me the heebie-jeebies because, you know, so is, you know, what's his name? Eric Prince, another Knight of Malta. Blackwater. Yeah, Blackwater dude. So you got this problem, and I'm hoping that's part of my objective for myself is to try to understand this and try to do things and say things in such a way that I can help hopefully increase people's potential to take the lessons of history and how we avoided these types of right-left calamitous tricks and move towards a much more rational way of thinking, of navigating through this crisis, which doesn't result in cannibalizing ourselves into a new civil war or reviving a new technocracy Inc. that came out of the same anarcho-syndicalist networks, ironically, that were circulating in New School and back in like the post-World War I period, that generated people like what's the name, Thorsten Veblen, who created a whole technocracy Inc. that Elon Musk's grandpa ended up leading. Veblen being the guy who pushed the whole Soviet of engineers that had its whole penetration into Russia, which thank God Stalin did take that down in his first mass trial of you know, his shutdown of the engineers trial in what is it, 26, 27, maybe 27. But, you know, like all this stuff is, I see this all coming out of the occult networks that were congealing in Ascona, Switzerland, Monte Verita. All of these creeps were doing
the Mountain of Truth.
In the Mountain of Truth. Yeah, the center of Black Mass of medieval Europe, of Central Europe, that was the center of the global Black Mass, the center hive of a lot of the witches' covens that were being, you know, inserted into every part of the world in the colonies of the Americas. That's what Cotton Mather was fighting. So, you know, you got this thing that's been maintaining itself, and it had their big coming out party with, you know, overseen by the Esalen Institute and shit that was directly tied to Ascona as well. You know, so you had their whole coming out party that shaped the baby boomer generation, who are all scrambled mentally and emotionally. And there's some good baby boomers, but really badly affected by this social engineering. Yeah. So, you know, I don't know, like I see adults in the room, but they're not in my part of the world. Like I'm looking at the quality of thinking and cultural battle that's coming and insights that are coming out of the Confucian Renaissance movement in China. It gives me a lot of hope to see like real culture of excellence that's being revived and protected against this whole woke infiltration thing. So that gives me hope. I look at the cultural excellence coming and being revived in Russia, increasingly it's being protected by a leadership right now that understands the deep implications of this fight. So I see adult decision making, and I hope to God that Trump has the ability to stay alive, to navigate through this thing. And if he's not captured already, and if he's just playing along with bad actors, and he's doing like a Putin, where you got to play along with bad actors in order to, like, you know, make compromises, then pull out the rug from under their feet. I hope he's doing that. I hope he is. And if he is, he better fucking stay alive. We'll see. I don't know, but hopefully, like I said, I know I'm in direct communication personally with a lot of people who are pretty influential in certain decision making. I know Courtney has tons of interesting contacts too. Then we're trying to like organize. I know all of us here are like trying to just be amplifiers for reasonable analysis to help people help themselves and work to conspire for the good. So that's what I'll just say is my 2 cents in this whole, you know, thing going into this. We'll see in the coming days and weeks and months ahead what the election results are going to be. I have no freaking clue, but those are my thoughts.
That's a lot
So
of
how
lifting.
do you follow, like, anything I'd say after Matt is going to sound like Orange Man good. That's brilliant.
Orange Man good.
I made a clip called "What It's Like to Interview Matt Ehret," and it's I just put together. It's like 1 minute. I should share it with you guys.
I gotta go, guys.
You're a fire hose.
Matt, thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
See you, Matt.
There he goes, the legend, Mathew Ehret himself. CJ, back to what you were saying, or then we can jump to Joaquin, Jason, and Courtney, and then Cowboy.
No, I want the best, come this election cycle, and it's just going to be interesting to observe it, to document it. But by all means, I've got 2 boys, and we have to correct a lot of the errors that's been made the past several decades for their future, and start to guide them in the right direction of understanding things. And I think, for the most part, I think they get a lot of what's happening in the world. They get the ideas, and they even shared with me, who they're voting for and their ideas, and asked me, what are your thoughts, Dad? And I kind of shared them, and I think that they're kind of aware of what's happening here in the United States. That there's really an attempt to kind of change course of our country, and we need to reverse that trend and in part really get rid of all the intervention things that are happening around the globe, and join the conversations with the BRICS, understanding that we don't have to necessarily have a Western-based centralized center. The world is changing, and we need to embrace that.
Yeah. Joaquin.
Yeah. So I look at things like moving. Things are not static. Things are always moving. And things are always changing, and I'm not very concerned about what happens after Trump. I'm not that concerned about J.D. Vance, even though I think that there's tremendous evidence and research that indicates that he's a safety net for the system. Let's say he's their guy, okay, and to whatever extent Trump is their guy too, in some ways, in a limited way, also doesn't really bother me. Because I think that the major crisis was the period between 2016 and 2020. And I think that, like we're saying, everything's always in motions. Everything is moving. And I look at the total ability to project power of the American empire going down, 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 down. And I look at the global East and the global South, and their ability to remain sovereign or to project power even is going up, up, up. So,
right.
Think about how critical those years were prior to World War II. Think about the months before the outbreak of World War II, how much the Germans and the Soviets were trying to delay. They were kind of moving their pieces close to the border, but every 3 months, every 6 months, whatever, mattered a lot. So today, 6 months is worth a lot more than it was in 1939. We're moving faster. It's like a quickening process with technology, with the action of trade, commerce, and development. So the way I see the whole story is more like the ability for the Western, let's say the global American empire, the Atlanticists or the globalists, to project power was much more decisive in 2016. And had we had Hillary Clinton as president, we would have pursued the war, which Joe Biden started in 2022. We would have had that start in 2017 or 2018 under Hillary Clinton. So in many ways, I think that Trump administration or his presence, regardless of where it comes from, regardless of whether it was a faction of the elites or totally just a few people around him or his vision or just with the people, these are all narratives. There's a lot of important facts in there. But whichever way you dice it, what happened was their plans for war and domination were thwarted at a critical time, a change point in the story of the American empire. So, 2028, it's like, India, Russia, China, Brazil, all it's going to be, their economic indexes are going to be even more than they were today. Their ability, you have all these different weapon systems, you've got drones, you've got, so much that's production driven. And I don't really see the United States able to really do the things that it could do 10 years ago. And I think they were aware of that. When Hillary Clinton was running for office in 2016, she said, this is the most important election in our entire history. And of course, there's that narcissist part of it, because it's like, yeah, because you're the one that's running, right? But it was really actually about the moment in time that they were at. It was a crossroads. It was an inflection point. And then you get to the pandemic and things like that, and or the plandemic, if you will. And all of these things were, weaponized in a way that you had some aspects that were used. There's the population stuff. There's the plot against Trump. But I'd like to speak to a few things about what might happen with this election. So I had been thinking there was really three things. And then Courtney mentions assassination. Like, yeah, they could do that again, right? So you've got the assassination thing. They could still do that. And then they'd have their guy Vance there. Perfect, right? Some people think, gosh, he should have had Dan Quayle or some retard, and that would have been the insurance policy, right? You've got the digital, right? You've got the vote stuff, like how they might between now and then steal the votes. You've got the lawfare, right? The attempts to put Trump in prison. And then you've got riots and social unrest. So on the riots and social unrest thing, I'm thinking that the way that they market tested it in real time, and the Kyle Rittenhouse stuff and everything, it was so huge. I think they've decided that they either can't do it or shouldn't do it. And I think they could do this later, but I don't see or hear from the people that I know that are in SEIU that were actually the people that did our revolution, where you're talking about, the political director at SEIU, Rafael Navarre, and all these people that were doing our revolution, which was a spinoff of the Bernie Sanders energy. I think they've burnt that bridge. I think more and more Bernie voters are going to be voting for Trump, more so than Bernie voters voted for Trump in 2016 and 2020. So you had this Our Revolution stuff where the funding was coming from, Act Blue and Democracy Action or whatever, right? And it was like this whole hub of just from this kind of Democrat, DNC, Zuckerberg, Sorosian funding, like all these other, things are funded. And you had BLM and Antifa. I don't see BLM and Antifa activity. You would need this kind of stuff to be salted and seeded for months, even the past year. And we just don't have that now. So I'm thinking that's not going to be something that we see, although we could be surprised. The lawfare, I think, could continue. But, stepping back a little bit, it's like sometimes you have to know when you've already won. And I really think that moment in time was 2016 to 2020. I really wasn't that worried when Biden comes in and I start seeing that his hands are tied. I start seeing that when he's doing things with Ukraine, it's clear. Of course, they have their appointed guy, like really kind of like their liaison in the Department of Defense or defense minister with Raytheon Lloyd Austin. But the actual Pentagon permanent administration, these guys did not allow Biden's nominees in. I mean, they had to compromise with the Pentagon. Remember, they had a whole slate of people. The Pentagon, I guess it's an independent organization that's not elected, right? They pushed back. Like, nope, not these guys. So remember, he gets in January. You go February, March, April. Not until April did they finally get a slate of people that would be acceptable to the Pentagon. And then it looked like there were certain rules, like you're not going to have a war with Russia. So these are things that seem to be like, networks and human relationships are really interesting because human energies work like water and they follow the path of least resistance. And in those 4 years that Trump was president, I think they totally broke so many networks and rearranged things. And then time was against the globalists that, people out of their own self-interest, business interest, market interest, what have you, their own Machiavellian machinations were like, this is the new reality. And then people gravitate to the new reality. They solidify those networks and their investment in that new reality, the one that Trump created. And now there's like people that were resistant to Trump are actually supportive of Trump because of the relationships and the new barriers and new openings that Trump created during those 4 years. So, for example, if they wanted to attack Iran, that would have been 10 years ago. You can't attack Iran now. You just can't do it. They have the conventional ability. They probably may have nukes, by the way, but they have the conventional ability to destroy Israel like thousands of times over. They've got 500 to 2 million hypersonic and ballistic missiles combined, minimum 500,000. What they launched at Israel, some months ago was like 100 of them or 200 of them. So that was like a fraction of a percent of what they can do. And that devastated, they really showed the Israelis what could happen. And Israel's attempt to give a response was like, wow, they didn't do anything. It was an embarrassment. I'm not trying to, troll them, but it was an embarrassment, and there seems to be adults in the room in different places. So, I've been optimistic about this. And when I saw how they engaged in the war in Ukraine, I was like, wow, think about how beneficial for Russia, all of these sanctions that were placed on Russia during the Trump years. It was almost like coordinated with Russia because it's like they targeted the industries in Russia that specifically they would need to affect import substitution industrialization. So it actually strengthened Russia's economy. Like we're talking about tariffs, right? Well, what the hell are fucking sanctions except for tariffs that someone imposes on you, right? But if those tariffs work for you, then you're like, wait a minute, we're better off. So a lot of weird things happen with Russia. A lot of weird things happened during the Trump years. They stopped World War III from happening. And, by not having Trump in there, but by having him have had such a huge influence, the inability of the Pentagon to accept the Biden regime's preferences in Ukraine and other places too, we could surmise, has led to now the situation where, Trump can come back. Whereas had he won, or had he been allowed to take the presidency in January 2020, he would be out now. And then they would, right? So this actually kind of extended the time for Trump to do some additional things. But I think most of the stuff was already done. I don't see the riots and the social unrest. But I do think look, the way that this stuff is done, you have to understand that it's compartmentalized and it's layered. It's very hierarchical, and they allow different teams to fight and continue on with the simulation and to experience agency and all these things. And it's very real to them. Like the Democrat versus Republican thing, we know on a certain level, arguably before MAGA, was a total 100% simulacrum, nothing real about it at all. But if you were a pollster, if you were hired to win a race, or if you were doing messaging, like it's very real. It's a real war game. It's a real simulation, even though it's being controlled at the top. So I think that even though there are still going to be people lower than the real decision makers in the global West who will allow some lawfare and venting and energies to go against Trump, I don't know if it'll be another assassination attempt. Definitely the lawfare, definitely before now and January 6th, attempts to mess with the digital stuff. But my general sense is that Trump is the guy that they've understood is going to restore some legitimacy. And I don't think that the elites in the West are even on board. I think the actual debate is between how can we engage with multipolarity versus versus globalism. And I think that those that were holding on to that globalism, holding on to that unipolarity, have slowly but surely realized that this is not going to be how it works. Like we have to downsize, we have to right size. I think about Elon Musk like downsizing and right sizing. Like, well, think about the global American empire downsizing and right sizing, transforming the United States from a transatlantic power what's totally invested in the Middle East, totally overextended, totally trying to destroy Russia on this rimland versus heartland theory, inherited from the late 19th century geopolitics. Like, it's the 21st century, guys. And, you know, we're operating system in terms of global chain of supply lines is based in 17th century technology. It's based in the galleon. It's based in ports and cities and then trade goes by boats. This is like a 300-400-year-old system. We're barely catching up now to a 200-year-old system of railroad. And, you know, roads and railroad and land travel is more efficient. It's cheaper. It's lots of things. Just-in-time production you can do a lot better with road and rail. So I'm thinking about the United States. I'm thinking about North and South America more likely to integrate into a Pan-American economy than a global American empire. So you're going to have like a, you know, a Latin American bloc that's more connected to a North American bloc. You're going to have, you know, China. You're going to have Russia maybe with Europe, or Russia maybe with China, or all three. You're going to have Africa. You're going to have South Asia. So these are things that are, this is like multipolarity. And there's going to be always that gargoyle effect. There's always going to be the salesman. There's always going to be the book talkers that are going to try to get in front of world events that are happening, saying, yes, we planned it, you know, still invest in us. Oh yeah, this is our long game, is to pretend that we're multiple polaris and now we're going to act in whatever, right? So, yeah, but we have to do follow the warning of Eric Blair, you know, George Orwell, 1984, where he sees actually like the world divided into these kind of blocks that are locked into this kind of competition too. So, you know, we've always many people have approached this in counter-hegemonic spaces, or in people that are critical of the empire, as a fight against a one world government. But there may be different things that are bad, you know, as well, that are not a one world government. Now, all of that, though, is premise. When I was always reading 1984 as a kid, I was like, you know, it doesn't make sense that there would be technological stagnation unless there was a conspiracy between the elites in those competing blocks. Because one of the factors in 1984 is that there's technological stagnation. I think that's the spoiler, really, because unless you do have this, it doesn't really make sense, the coordination, given with everything going on, then the technology is going to drive things, and it's not going to allow for this kind of stagnant 1984 world. But that's on my radar screen. Like, I'm cognizant that that's a possibility and shit like that. So I guess it's like, for me, this moment in time, we have passed through the firewall. We're already in the aftermath in many ways of things that needed to be done. And I'm very optimistic about that. And I look at the crisis now and what the US is doing in the war in Ukraine, and it's really like just getting rid of old military equipment. It's depopulating Ukraine, because that's going to be the future Russian population. So let's depopulate Ukraine by sending him to the front to be killed by the Russian army, because every dead Ukrainian is a dead future Russian in the reality of the future of Ukraine. So like, let's destroy the infrastructure. Let's make it as expensive as possible for Russia to get Ukraine. But they don't really think they're going to stop Russia from getting Ukraine. What they can do is destroy the European economy with high energy prices and the stupid, foolish war against Russia. And then they can buy up all those companies. That's what's happening now. And then all these German and European companies are leaving the European Stock Exchange. They're re-headquartering in the United States. They're delisting and relisting on the New York Stock Exchange. This is happening right now. It's all over Forbes, Wall Street Journal, New York, et cetera, et cetera.
Zero Hedge. Yep.
The Economist, the whole 9 yards, all of the mainstream kind of bullshit economic publications, but they're acknowledging that fact. So it's, I just want to reiterate that things are dynamic. And so even though like the West, the globally, and had all these different plots and all these different ways of retaining power, bro, it ain't infinite. Okay, we got to get past this gargoyle thing where we believe that there are these master planners that can avoid every crisis and they always come out ahead. Like, you know what?
Yeah, it's nonsense.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
exactly. Very well said. Jason, and then Courtney, and then we'll finish up with CJ and Cowboy. Go ahead,
All right,
Jason.
B. Well, thanks for putting me after Mathew Ehret and Joaquin Flores. I'm like, my cat's breath smells like cat food. No, just kidding. Joaquin, wow, what a rundown. You touched on notes that I'd been taking throughout the evening. As a Canadian observer, our hope up here is that we're going to be electrified by seeing a real populist government take hold in the U.S., especially one that's learned from previous mistakes. No Pompeo, no Bolton, this kind of stuff. To see that, because the biggest thing for me about Trump is that he speaks to these nations. So we got conflicts everywhere, but he's just art of the deal. He'll talk a whole bunch of Turkey. I mean, you remember North Korea, the Twitter war, and the leftist media was telling us he's going to start World War III, and then the next week he's walking across the parallel. I mean, I almost cried when I saw that. And you know, so we want more of that, and we're facing, you know, kind of a fake populist. Trudeau's gone no matter what up here. We've got kind of a fake conservative guy who's going to win. But we do have a populist movement up here with the People's Party of Canada and Maxime Bernier. He's really our Trump, but he's getting completely ignored and shoveled under. So we want to see a huge success in the U.S. so that we can build a swell up here and be like, see, look, we can do this. He's, you know, so ending the wars, Trump talking. Another thing I really look forward to that doesn't get talked about a lot with Trump, it really sets him apart. And Joaquin touched on it a bit, is plans for infrastructure. There were many executive orders and directives signed to start building extensive railways. He approved the railway going up from the States through Alberta up to Alaska. And then that puts you just a few miles away from a bridge across the Bering Strait and get back to where we were in the 1900s. And, you know, like real actual peace. You know, how much harder this would be if Russians can meet Americans, if you can get on a train in Moscow and go to San Francisco. And those were plans that we left behind, you know, almost 200 years ago. And everybody was ready to go on it. Half the reason that Russia was just like, sure, you can have Alaska, was they were foreseeing a future where we could just connect with a tunnel or a bridge. And Trump took steps towards that. And I often tell the story going to visit Mathew Ehret in Montreal, and I was in Ottawa at the time. I'm way up in the Yukon now. I ran away from Ottawa after the lockdowns. And I'm getting on this train that, as I'm walking by it to get on our Via Rail system, our nationalized train system, you can see all the Bondo where the side of it's rusted out, and they've just filled it in with Bondo, and like not even a matching paint covering it up and stuff like this. And it's like 2024. What are we doing? They've got mag trains everywhere over Russia and Japan and China. We're one of the biggest countries in the world. Think of how much we would benefit from this. And we're just bondoing old trains. No one even thinks about taking trains. It's like a lost cause. So that's another thing I really look forward to with Trump. And we up here in Canada, we can't wait. We can't wait. With that, guys, I'm going to roll out because I'm doing my election coverage in about an hour and a half. Got to get some food in. And is anything reporting? Because it's 5 p.m. out there.
Nothing.
Right? Nothing.
Still nothing.
Yeah. So I don't know if you saw the note. I did find CNN's coverage in 2016, and it was the same thing. They had a big counter up that said we can report results in 40 minutes at 4:10 p.m. So
well, the result, but it's just like they would always say the percentage counted in versus the exit polling data. Nothing.
Yeah. It seemed to sort of show the same. That's something that we'll have to take a look at because it is very dead out there. No one seems to want to.
Correct.
I mean, they should have been publishing for 20 minutes now.
They should have, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing anything on Reuters, so it's going to be
nothing on Associated Press either.
Are you guys going for a long time? Or are you guys going through the election?
No. I got to hop off for myself as well. So, Jason, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. Courtney, go ahead.
Well, I want to piggyback on what you were saying about the train. I think that that would really terrify them because as Matt Ehret went through kind of the structure of all these elite powers, and we can really see it, I think, through kind of the British Anglo-American establishment kind of empire, which I think in a lot of ways we won't go through the whole history of that because that would take way too long. And Matt did kind of touch on the occult aspect of that. But, a lot of it does seem to be kind of like the Roman Empire kind of funneled, but they have a hold on all of this, just to say that they have a kind of a monopoly on the waterways. And so to have the train would be kind of it would be a threat to them. So
Yeah.
I think that's
Law of the
pretty
land versus law of the sea.
Exactly. I think that would be really, really huge. So definitely I'd be excited about that as well. And also to touch on what he was saying about the Knights of Malta in particular, they do seem to be really very much infiltrative and a subversive kind of organization even today. And this is not, when you bring up these types of organizations, the first pushback that you get is, oh, well, I know somebody who's a Knights of Malta and they're a wonderful person. And I do too. And I don't think that, inherently guilt by association or involvement in any of these organizations inherently makes somebody, the devil. But
Right.
I am seeing a lot of surrounding Trump. And that is concerning. And I think you can really see it through the medical freedom movement, which does make a lot of sense. If you look at the history of the Knights of Malta, it was the Knights of Hospitalier, and their exoteric veneer is associated with kind of medical charity movements. And it does look like there is a lot of attempt to infiltrate and surround Trump with some subversive types of activity. So I don't know who said it before, but I think that it's definitely, I've already made my stance pretty clear. I do think we should champion Trump, hope that he gets in, but then we really do need some strong accountability because those forces have not gone under. And, when you look at what's going on, he had also brought up like the theosophical movements, and that is very much alive and well. A lot of them have been rebranded as New Thought Leaders, New Thought Movement. Certainly Oprah has platformed many of these figures over the past several decades, and daytime TV in general has, but Oprah has been kind of a ringleader for them. And they're very much connected to the UN and to a lot of these political structures that don't look like political structures. They kind of masquerade as spiritual movements. And but when you look deeper, they are really it's kind of like the Fellowship for the New Life, which was became the splinter group for that became the Fabian Society and then the Labor Party, right? Because they realized that, oh, we can't just have a spiritual movement, we have to have an outfit for political operations. And that's very much what you see when you take a deeper look at some of this stuff. So I've been looking at something called Game B. And the probably most popular figure involved with Game B would be Brett Weinstein, who, again, to go back to the medical freedom movement, has, he recently was part of the Rescue the Republic. And, to bring up the Rosicrucian symbol of the phoenix again, he actually ended his speech talking about how it's a republic if we can phoenix it. So and that was a very interesting kind of statement. But he was involved in the inception of this Game B concept, and back when it was the Stanton meetings, and that was Jim Rutt who organized these Stanton meetings. And they were initially trying to create something called the Emancipation Party. And so when you're bringing up, like Bernie Sanders, a lot of these platforms that the Emancipation Party were talking about were very Bernie Sanders-esque. They were talking about things like the universal basic income and a lot of socialist platform. Jim Rutt himself says that if it were the boomers, they could have gotten everybody on board. The Gen X was kind of on board, but it was really the millennials who they struggled to embrace this. And he says it was largely because they really loved the platform, but they didn't like the idea of a political party. And so this Game B is very much alive and well. Currently, it's kind of like a rebranded Est. So those of you who are familiar with Werner Einhard and the Landmark Forum, of course, Esselin adopted a lot of this. And it is this very similar to what they're talking about at the UN with this well-being economy, tokenization. Then there's also Christopher Life, who is, he's working on he's oxymoronic. He talks about the United Independent Party. So it's the one nation, so kind of superseding this idea of there being a left and right. So it's very appealing to people who are aware of a uniparty movement, but it is much more aligned with a globalist agenda than anything else. So all this to say that I do really hope Trump gets in, but once he does, I think that we have to be really vigilant in holding him accountable and being aware of some of the darker forces, they call it the dark enlightenment, that is surrounding him. And not to, because what I typically see, if we do look at the left-right paradigm and we look at it as, take that at face value, the people who tend to identify on the left often say that they want bigger government, they want top-down control measures, but when you look historically at what they've actually done, it is grassroots, bottom-up, lateral infiltration, right? It's the Gramscian long march through the institution. And when you look at the people who identify as being on the political right, typically they say they want grassroots, they want local, they want minimal government, but they kind of stay asleep at the wheel until every 4 years, suddenly they mobilize to get engaged for a presidential election when the United States is not supposed to have a dictator. That's why we have 3 branches of government. There's all these checks and balances. We really need to even if Trump does get in, which I do hope he does, that we need to really stay vigilant, get involved at the local level, and really stand for freedom in every way.
Very well said. Very well said, Courtney. Thank you so much. CJ, go for it, brother.
Hey, I'm a little pressed for time, B, so I'm gonna there. Enjoyed the convo today. A lot of interesting topics, and we will wait and see what happens in the next few days, months.
Very well said. Very well said. Cowboy, go for it, brother.
Yeah, I like to keep it simple. I take a look at the world, and I look at, you have the global south, you've got the east, you've got Europe, you've got the US, and you can divide that up a lot of different ways. I like to think that the US is a little bit walled off from the madness of Europe. I think Europe is going to be sacrificed. That's why you have all these companies moving to the US from Germany. I mean, if they're moving here, why aren't they moving to somewhere else? There might be reasons for that, but they are at least moving here. And when you companies like that, those are like very smart people with billions of dollars under their control. Like, they're probably making decisions that are relatively informed. So I'd like to think that that is an optimistic thing, Under any circumstance, whether that's true or not, whether things are going to go well or not, whoever wins, whatever it is, all I can say is learn how to profit and get out of harm's way.
That's it.
That's
Very
all I
well
got.
said. I want to thank all you guys for listening in. Special election coverage as the clock ticks away and the days fall off the calendar. We're going to see tomorrow. Hopefully by tonight we'll have an announced winner. Again, my theory, folks. Look, we haven't got any real percentages in from any of the major networks: Fox, CNN, MSLSD, CNBS, any one of these crazy networks. No percentage and no exit polling, which means to me, it means Kamala's polling and numbers are actually in the toilet. This could be a good thing. So we're going to see how the night progresses. We're crossing our fingers. It's a hope for humanity, a bright future, or a demonic reality. That's what we're voting for. I want to thank all the guests for showing on. Courtney, Joaquin Flores, Cowboy, CJ, Mathew Ehret, Tim Kirby, and Jason Dahl. I want to thank all you guys for joining us today. And all of us, we should do this again very soon. Thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful day. And keep it locked and loaded right here, roguenews.com. Cheers, everybody.